Yo, this is Alex Mal for Destiny. Today, we have the great pleasure of being with Nether Beast, Underground Muscle. And for those you don't know, he's probably the biggest and strongest natural in the history of YouTube fitness. And this channel is amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. After you're done watching this chat, go subscribe to him because you will not regret it. He produces excellent content, very unique stuff, and I think you'll be blown away. So, how you doing today, Nether?
Excellent, and I can't thank you enough for the honor of this interview, Alex. I've been a follower of yours since before I knew I was even going to have a channel, and so this couldn't be more rewarding, and I couldn't be more thankful and honored.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm looking forward to our discussion. I think we're going to have a lot of interesting chats, and I believe that the viewers will benefit from this as well.
Absolutely.
So before we get started, can you just talk about your training background? Some of your best lifts, how long you've been lifting for, things of that nature?
Sure. Trying to go back, it's been a long time for me now, over 20 years, but when I started, basically I saw somebody really muscular one summer, and I wanted those guns, so I started just working arms like most noobs, you know, and got some really good biceps, but didn't know much else. And then about a year later, I was in, no, maybe 2 years later, I was a senior in high school, and I had an English teacher who was a pretty big, strong dude. I remember he was repping 315 and stuff, and you know, I was bigger than anything we'd seen. So I got along really well with him, and so I started working out with him after school in the school gym, and he pretty much showed me how to kind of cover your basics all over your whole body. And we came up with a challenge. His goal was to lose 20 pounds to get down to 200. My goal was to gain 20 pounds to get up to 200. So we had a race. And I beat him to it. He never got down to 200. He's a big dude. But I gained over 20 pounds of mass that year by, you know, covering my whole body. And after that, I was hooked. And it's been, you know, like I always say, I've never really stuck to a program, but I've read a few, and I've just always taken the pieces I wanted. And as soon as I kind of understood where all my muscles are and made that mental connection to them, going forward, I always knew, okay, if I want to train glutes, I have all these options. If I want to train triceps, I want to have all these options. So I've never really stopped trying different things over the years. And of course, I keep the gems, the things that work the best to me. I keep I keep those in my rotation. And then anything else that's so-so, I just keep trying different systems and different approaches. And from doing that, all the evidence I've gotten, this is what I'm trying to share with people, is that, you know, just following some conventional idea, I mean, that's great for a beginner. It's okay. It gets you somewhere. But when you branch out on your own, you start exploring how your body responds to different stuff. You'll find there's just certain things that are just so key that work better than a lot of conventional stuff, you know? So I'm showing a lot. I show a lot of my favorites. I'm not telling people what to do, but it's like I really believe in these lifts, you know, and you got to experiment with them. You got to try these for yourself, you know?
Well, I think the results speak for themselves, you know, and
Yeah.
it's experience-based. It's not just some controlled little study consisting of noobs. It's something
Yeah.
that you developed over decades. And now it's actually, people are watching your channel, they're experimenting with what you're showing them, and they're getting great gains. You
Yep.
know, like what I find interesting about your channel is the fact that you've invented exercises, you know,
Yeah.
and that's always been like, wow, it's so cool because when you think about it, conventional lifts, right? They were invented by somebody, and at some point they were considered unconventional until they were popularized, and now everybody knows what they are, you know.
Yep.
So what you're doing, for example, it's like the reincarnation of that, and
Yeah.
people are getting great gains from it, like the upper chest shrug. I think that's like a revolutionary concept. Although I do know that Athlete X had his own version a few years back with a dumbbell. Yours was like next level because you found
Yeah.
a way how to really overload and tweak the mechanics a little bit, you know?
Right, right. I saw his video. Somebody, you know, people started sending me that once I shared my chest shrug thing, and like you say, I checked it out, and it was cool and everything, but I feel like he only like began to
Yeah.
explore just the beginning of that, you know. It turns out you can take it a lot further, a lot more weight, a lot more reps. You can really build some upper chest meat, you know.
Yeah, and there's people making response videos too, and they're showing like their progress with it and the different variations, and it's like, wow, you can expand so much on just one little idea.
Yeah, yeah. And like you say, people forget. They think these conventional exercises are somehow written in stone, but like you say, bodybuilding and weightlifting and stuff didn't really get going till not that long ago. And And it's like people invented basic lifts to kind of cover the whole body, and then they just stopped. Like, okay, we got it all now.
Yeah.
But of course we don't have it all, you know? There's always so many new ideas that there's room for.
Right.
And I'm just trying to get people to think that way, to realize, you know, hard work's one thing, but if we find better methods where you can get more for your hard work, nothing wrong with that, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I see what you're saying. Like people think that everything's been figured out. I mean, I understand that we've come a long way in exercise science, but we're still learning new things. Like every few years, you got a major study coming in, and it just debunks what we knew 10, 20 years ago. So the
Yeah,
way I see it, why live in these studies? I mean, use them as guidance, you know, reference them, do stuff like that, but also experiment on your own and think for yourself, you know? And if you find something that genuinely works better, do it. Don't just be a sheep and follow what everyone else is doing just because you're trying to impress them, you know? And I think,
yeah,
again, that's what you're doing perfectly. It's experience based and it really does work.
yeah, exactly. I'm a strong believer in, if you compare book knowledge, like theoretical knowledge, to experience knowledge, I mean, we know that anybody in sports, for example, it won't matter how many books you've read. If you go up against an athlete who has experience in that sport, even if he's never read a book, he's just going to be way better, you know?
Hmm.
And so I love books. I love knowledge. I love all the words and everything. But then you've got to go out there and really try and make your own assessment. And I think a lot of this is people don't believe in themselves. Sometimes they stumble upon something that they're getting good gains, but because nobody else does it, they just quit doing it. They like don't believe in their own discovery, you know?
Right?
And I just want people to realize, man, believe in yourself. You can be innovative. You can come up with something that nobody's come up with, or your own version of it that works better for you. And
Hmm.
I know that maybe, you know, the social scene might not be all that supportive at first, because a lot of people are just like, oh, what are you doing, you weirdo? But you got to believe in yourself, and you got to pioneer that shit and show people that, hey, it works. You know, it may look a little funny because you're not used to it, but every lift looked funny when somebody started doing it, you know?
Definitely. Well, you know what it is? Also, when people go to commercial gyms, that's what I think there's like a group element and there's a lot of social pressure, and it kind of it negatively impacts their creativity.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you also from experience, since I got my home gym, I've just been inventing things left and right without even thinking about it. It just comes naturally because you're all by yourself, you have limited equipment, and you're working with what you got. Now, if you're in a commercial gym where you have all these nice machines, you have all these dumbbells, power racks, everything is already established for you, and it kind of stifles you in a way, and you're gonna be stuck in doing whatever is already placed for you, you know. And if you do attempt to try something new, people are gonna laugh at you, they're gonna record you, put you in a gym fail. So it really is like there's a group pressure. I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bummer. It's been a while since I went to a public gym, but the last few times I went, I just got in trouble for the dumbest things, you know. People coming
Yeah,
over, oh, that's dangerous, and I'm like, well, it's you don't even know what this is, and furthermore, it's only dangerous for me. So what do you even care? Like if you think it's dangerous, let me do it anyway.
yeah,
Because if I
quote unquote dangerous. Yeah, quote
yeah,
unquote.
exactly,
That's right.
and it's just they're constantly interrupting and telling you shouldn't do that, and everything from little kids to really old people are lecturing me, and it's like, man, I can't get in the zone in this environment
Yeah,
anymore. Got to go do my own thing, you know.
for sure. I'm just curious, Nether. How many times have you been kicked out of a gym?
Let me think back now. Oh man, I remember being kicked out of a Bally's for being shirtless because me and the other biggest guy in the gym were eyeballing each other
Okay, yeah,
in the mirrors. You know, he was benching and I was doing something else. And so pretty soon I take my shirt off, you know, and I'm all posing in the mirror and covered in sweat and just like being a beast. And the next thing I know, I'm being escorted out. They're like, this is a public health violation. And I was like,
yeah.
really? Am I that dangerous? My sweat's going to kill people. But so I didn't know about that rule. And then another time I got kicked out for taking a couple of, this was a different gym. I forget which one now. But I had a couple 10-pound dumbbells and I was like throwing punches as hard as I could
Yeah,
in a corner by myself. It's not like I was going to let
yeah.
go and hit somebody with a dumbbell. But this old grandma comes up behind me and she just keeps like, that's not safe and I'm going to go report you and stuff. And sure enough, she did. And they asked me to, you know, either stop that or leave. And so I was just like, well, forget it.
Wow,
I'm
that's so weird.
yeah. And I know there's one more in there somewhere that I'm not thinking of.
Well, did
So,
it involve grunting or using
oh
very
yeah,
heavy
oh
weights?
yeah, yep. Being loud and aggressive and actually lifting heavy things. You know,
Yeah,
people are like, "Oh, that sounds dangerous. Get out of here." And it's like, you guys run a gym and you don't even know what weightlifting is. How is
yeah,
that? Oh, that's
exactly.
easy.
Well, I think that's also like what separates these commercial gyms from like fighting gyms. From what I've seen, like when you go in a freaking boxing gym, it's not pretty. It's just usually it's like ghetto looking, and it's just
Yep.
hard work, and you just gotta put in, and no one cares if you're full of sweat, you got your shirt off or whatever. But when you go to these commercial gyms, it's all pretty, and
Yeah.
you're not even allowed to do basic things like grunt. Like what the hell? I used to get
Yeah.
warnings all the time when I used to do deadlifts. And I wasn't even that strong back then. I was only doing like 4 plates. But every time the weight would touch the ground, it would make a clanking noise. And I would
Yeah.
get threatened left and right that they would kick me out of the gym. But it's like, what do you want me to do? Lower it really, really slowly and not make any noise? So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, you're not even allowed to deadlift. I used to love that about when I'd go into a gym and I'd hear, a big
Yeah, you hear the
deadlift
slamming.
sound.
Yeah, it's the best part. It's
Uh,
the ambiance.
yeah, it gets your testosterone up just hearing that. And now it's like you want the opposite. They want like Britney Spears playing, and they want you to just sit in some clean chair and kind of, you know, move your foot a few times and then read your magazine. And it's weird. It's like a coffee shop or something. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, I really think a lot of people should set up at least a few workout stations at home. You don't even have to buy a rack or anything. Just set up what you can
Yeah.
and and do what parts of your training you can do at home and not be distracted by, interruptions from other people the whole time.
Well, that's something I want to get into today. Home gyms. First of all, how long have you been training at home?
Well, on and off since I got that power rack, and that would have been, I'm guessing, about 15 years ago.
15 years
So,
ago. Wow.
yeah. So the last time, now I have joined gym since having that thing. I'm thinking the last gym I was a member of was probably about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So it's been a while now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really long time, for real. So you've
Yeah.
been just grinding it out in your muscle dungeon by yourself and putting in this hard work. You really are the Nether Beast when you think about it. It's so cool.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I do it totally authentically out of my own passion. I never knew I was going to be teaching or sharing this stuff one day. I have to drive. It's something I would be doing regardless. It just keeps me grounded and sane, and I have a lot of mental and physical energy I need to channel into something.
Right.
So, it's just a healthy, good part of my life. But now I'm realizing the implications for health, the implications for mindset. I mean, it's making such a difference for so many people. So I'm really glad to be doing this now. It's really rewarding, the feedback and people, the way they're able to help themselves with some of this information. It's very rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, that's when you hear that someone changed their life for the better, it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah,
It's great because you're changing someone's life. Like just think
yeah,
about the implications that has. And going back to yourself, like I'm sure you would have loved to have this information when you were younger, to have a wise man come in and just share this knowledge and wisdom.
yes. On my journey, I went through stages you know, where I wasn't as far along with my progress as I am now, sorting out my beliefs in life and this and that. But I went through stages where I was bitter about that exact same thing. Like, I'd look back and go, why wasn't there any adults to just, tell me more how things actually work instead of telling me fairy tales that I believed? And I
Right.
went about my life that way. And then, decades later, it's like, well, that doesn't even work. What have I been doing? And this is about life in general, not just, weightlifting and so forth. But absolutely, if somebody would have shared the things with me about mind, owning your own power, how energy works, manifestation, um, harnessing your own creativity and believing in it. If somebody would have, instilled that in me at a much younger age, I don't know where I'd be or what I'd be doing right now. Obviously, this was more my path, but man, it'd be phenomenal. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna talk more about those concepts later, without getting too metaphysical, if you will.
Right,
But
right.
I'd like to talk about the power of the mind and all that because I feel that is a huge part to your success.
Yep.
Okay, not just in lifting, but in other things as well. And I honestly believe it so much. And that's one of the things that drew me to your channel was the fact that you had these beliefs. Like you had a higher self, and you weren't just settling for everything that people like these limitations that people put on you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't. My whole life, I was looking for something, and I know a lot of people are, whether they realize it or not. And I found that a lot of what we're really looking for is more of what we really are, that we're just
Right.
unaware of. And the more open I get to that, the more interesting life keeps getting, and the more, breakthroughs and extraordinary things that occur that, sometimes people don't even believe that could be possible. But I'm like, I know I feel the same way, but I'm experiencing it, so it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, even at the risk of sounding totally crazy, which I'm sure I do to plenty of people, but I've been surprised how many people really are open to a lot of this, and they're benefiting from it.
Mm.
Um, Being open to how much your mind affects your body, your physical body, and really everything in life.
For sure.
So,
So what are some limitations that you used to have in regards to lifting that you just broke through and you ended up conquering whatever it was?
okay, eh, one thing that comes to mind is I used to get overtrained a lot, like back in my 20s, because I love training and I was willing to work hard, well, every day, but then I would get sick. And so I started like 7 days a week. Then I get really run down and sick, and I'd be sick for like 3 weeks. And I'm like, damn it, I hate that. I hate being sick. So I don't want to overtrain. So I started cutting it back. I cut it back to 6, 5, 4, 3. I went all the way down to 1 day a week. And of course, I wasn't getting sick anymore, and I was getting some gains. But it frustrated me that my recovery capacity wasn't as high as how much I like to train. So over the years, all these thousands of hours of research and trials and this and that with supplements and learning how different things synergize and activate each other, um, I've been able to synthesize enough of that and put it all together in a synergistic blend of things that basically I feel like my recovery capacity is at least twice what it was, and that's like 2 decades ago.
So at your age now, you feel that your recovery is better than when you were younger, basically.
Much better,
Okay.
much better. I can literally work out every day now, and I almost never get sick. Now I do light days. I don't work out hard every day because
Right.
I listen to my body. When I'm feeling a little more run down, I'll just do accessory stuff. I'll do like arm feeders, external rotation, maybe some band face pulls. I'm loving those. You got me
Awesome.
started on that, yeah. And maybe some rebounding, just little stuff like that on a light day, just to get the blood and everything circulating. And I just think it's healthy to have a light day rather than a nothing day where you just sit on the couch. But yes, my ability to, for example, that 100,000 pounds of rack pulls in 10 minutes. I did feel run down for at least a week after that because it's just so much
Yeah, it's
tonnage.
crazy. Yeah.
But I swear to you, Alex, back in my 20s, if I would have done 500 or whatever I could have done back then for that many reps, I would have got sick. I would have been so run down, I would have got a flu or something for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
So I noticed that back then that, man, hard workouts, they drain my immune system, they drain my resources, and I got to figure out a way to overcome this. Because obviously, if you just go on drugs, yes, your muscles will keep growing, but you're robbing the rest of your body of even more of the things that was already lacking because now your body's just prioritizing muscle. So I know that that's not a wise path. That's how you end up, tearing your tendons and having serious problems.
Yeah.
And so I figured that if I could devise all the right things to put together nutritionally and supplementally and so forth, I could get a lot of help with the anabolic processes, but it would come from a place of true vitality instead of a place of just anabolic. Um, that's one of the main concerns I have for people taking the drugs is I don't think they realize that in order to build that much extra muscle, your body is unless you really are a master of nutrition, your body's probably robbing things from organs and other things just to keep building the muscles bigger and bigger and bigger than your body would do on its own.
Hmm.
So that's a concern. So slowly, over 20 plus years, I've been able to put together enough things that I can feel anabolic improvements, but it's coming from a place of extreme vitality and health. My mindset, everything just feels better. I hardly ever get sick. I'm able to stay in a positive state of mind, which is not, I used to be in the emotional dumps like a lot of young people growing up in this world. And now it's just what I have is so valuable to me. It's a little bit hard to explain it all sometimes, but a lot of people are asking the right questions, and I'm just doing my best to share and to pass out the knowledge in hopes that they won't take it for granted because they didn't have to go through the
Right.
20 plus years of all that trial to get it.
Hmm. So, but this improved recovery, would you credit the supplementation and all the herbs that you take? So it's really a nutritional thing, right? that you're
Yeah.
ingesting.
Yeah, nutrition and in this world, as much toxicity as there is, the other side of that is having cleansing methods that either daily type cleansing or something you do every so often. Because what I noticed is after you do a real deep cleanse, all your nutritional supplements work like 5 times better. There was times in the past where I would try a good supplement, but I couldn't even tell I was using it.
Hmm.
And I noticed that after more I had done more cleanses on my health journey, those same things started to work much better. And that's when I realized, okay, our systems are more clogged. They're not letting in all that nutrition. So the cleaner I can get this thing, the better all those really special nutrients are actually going to work for me. And it's really impressive what these stacks of nutrients can do when you put them together right. It really is.
Right. Well, here's a bit of an off-topic question, but since you brought it up, I'm just curious because I've been taking ashwagandha, right? By
Hmm.
recommendation, of course. And when I first started, it tasted absolutely horrible. Like I wanted to throw up. It was just, oh man. First of all, it smells like sawdust, and the
Yeah.
taste is just horrible. And first of all, whenever I have friends come over, I always make them try it, just to mess with their heads. That's a must do. Whenever you come over to my place, you gotta have ashwagandha, right? So this stuff was tasting horrible at first, but after taking it for some time, it doesn't bother me at all. Like I could just take it down no problem. And I'm wondering, is that a sign of like detoxification or something? Is it the body healing? Is it getting used to it? Like what's going on here?
It usually is, yeah. A lot of people will report when they start some new potent health product, they're like, oh God, it made me sick or I hated it. And if they get past that stage and then it doesn't taste bad anymore, that's usually what it indicates. It was changing something in your body, and it probably did involve a detox, and so your body's like, ew, I don't like
Yeah.
this feeling. But like you say, once you get past that hump, it just gets better.
Okay.
And that word ashwagandha, I think it means sweat of the horse. That's what it
Sweat of the
actually
horse.
is.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
it tastes. It sure tastes like that. Damn.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
So
I've never
like,
split.
sorry. Yeah. What like adaptogenic herbs though? Would you say they're beneficial for bodybuilding and strength training, or is it really to balance out other things in the body? Like I know ashwagandha is good for the adrenals, I believe, and thyroid function.
Yep, yep. Um, they're great. They are good for athletes and bodybuilders. And what really got me started there was all the Russian studies that I read when they were experimenting with things that they could take without failing a drug test to help them win the Olympics. And that got me started thinking about it. So then I did a lot more research on adaptogens, and I realized, yeah, of course, they improve work capacity because anytime all your different glands start working better together, you have higher vitality. Now they're not like a steroid that's just going to start inflating you or anything, but because your vitality and your overall health is better, you can put more into your workouts. You can get extra reps. You can do more frequency more often, and all that adds up. So I definitely believe they're a serious performance enhancer. It's just that they do so much more than that. They make everything in life a little better,
Yeah.
and they tend to tune and just harmonize your system as a whole. So it's easy to not even know about the athletic benefits, but they definitely help. Yeah,
Okay.
it's even been shown in studies that with ashwagandha specifically, I remember seeing a study on this that they tested it on I think sprinters and found that their VO2 improved and all their sprint times improved. And these were all highly trained, sprinters at a high level. So it's it's definitely
Right.
it's definitely for real. Yeah.
Okay. And if you could only, because a lot of the people watching this channel, they just want the fitness information, right? So if you can
Right.
only pick one adaptogen for, let's say, recovery and muscle building, what would that be?
Uh, Ashwagandha is probably hard to beat because it has so many things that are relevant to people right now. There's like a huge number, I don't want to call it like a plague, but there's a huge number of people with thyroids that don't function right.
Hmm.
And so for that reason alone, since it tends to specialize in that, I would say that's a really good choice. And another one that I'd put right up there if a person wanted to try just one as like a performance enhancer is called Mucuna pruriens, and or velvet bean is perhaps an easier name for it if people want to Google it. And that one's known to increase dopamine in the brain, increase growth hormone, increase testosterone, lower prolactin. Basically, it's just like a hormonal and a neurotransmitter booster. And people are a little bit afraid of it because when they hear dopamine in the brain, You know, there's been studies that when you just take like synthetic dopamine for a long time, but you got to remember, being that it's a natural tonic herb, it's not increasing dopamine in the brain the same way taking synthetic dopamine that's made in a lab somewhere does. So from everything I've studied so far, it's very safe over the long term, and that's why it's considered an adaptogen. The older word for adaptogen is tonic, like in all the old writings. And of course, the concept with a tonic herb is it's safe to take daily, and the idea is that if you do so, you get more benefits over time. It's like a slow, subtle buildup of
Right.
benefits.
Okay. So, what about nutrition then? Because I know one thing about that you talk a lot about is food combinations and how people are just not digesting their food,
Yeah,
and the gut, they end up having all kinds of havoc there. So, can you talk a little bit about basic food combination and what would you recommend?
sure. And a little background for people to kind of wrap their head around this idea, because we grew up in this culture where most of us did. We grew up in a culture where we have foods from all around the world at our fingertips all the time, and we just got used to just eating
Yeah.
whatever, you know, all those things together. But if you think back in history, it was never like that. Different cultures, like these guys, were nomads that lived on dairy, and that's why to this day there's a few people that actually digest dairy well because of their genes. Over here, you got people that lived on mostly grains and produce, and over here you got hunter gatherers. And over thousands and thousands of years, people's diets were more simple and more focused on certain key things, and they weren't combining it all in one meal. It's just not the way the human pancreas and the parts of us that digest, they're not really geared for that. So when you stuff, you know, different food groups in there all together, the type of enzymes you need to break down any one of those food groups is totally different. It's like a blueprint that's all to itself. So the body has to decide and try to guess based on all those different things which enzymes are most important for me to produce right now. And it can only make so many at one time. So what happens is it'll prioritize a certain food in your stomach, and then the other ones don't really get digested. And the problem with that, beyond wasted nutrition, is that when you don't digest things and they go in your gut, especially like animal products and dairy and heavy stuff like that, it becomes really nasty, and it can become like corroded onto the walls of your gut, and a lot of people are dealing with that. And of course, from there, your health just suffers in a variety of ways because you're not eliminating toxins at the rate you should, and you're not taking in nutrients at the rate you should. So like most alternative healers will say, you know, start with the digestive tract. That's the place to start, you know,
Right.
correcting health issues for 99% of us. So, and as far as food combination science goes, there's not a lot out there because it's not a popular topic and nobody can like patent that idea and make millions off it. So it's not like there's a lot of research, but from what there is, it seems that some of the basic best guidelines are not to combine starchy things with heavy proteins, especially like you could get away with lentils as a protein source because they're kind of starchy anyway, and I tell people that's kind of a hack. If you want to have some protein in a starchy meal, you could get away with lentils. But most everything else, if you're eating starches, your body will digest the starch, but it won't digest the protein very well. And these food combinations are rampant. The whole meat and potatoes and spaghetti and meatballs and everybody's favorite stuff
Mm-hmm.
almost is like a combination of starchy stuff and heavy proteins. And it's just really a no-no as far as the way the body digests things.
Okay.
So I try to tell people, you know, I know it's weird, but if you can eat those things in different meals, then you can make the best of it, you know. And some other basics to know is that like fats and proteins go together fine. In fact, like Vince Gironda was always trying to tell people, you'll utilize protein better if you do eat it with fat. So eating overly concentrated protein that has like no fat in it, you actually don't digest that and assimilate it near as well. So fats and proteins combine well. Starches and non-starchy carbs are fine. Non-starchy vegetables go with anything except for fruits. Fruits should be eaten alone. That's one of the other ones that I see people that they don't realize, like, well, fruit's good for you. Let me just eat some bananas with this meal. But it's like because those other foods are going to digest so much slower than fruit does, the fruit will ferment in your stomach, and then by the time it gets to your gut, it's creating like alcohol sugars, and that feeds candida, which is rampant in society. So it's just these basic, like, yes, these are probably all good foods for somebody, but when you just take everything from every corner of the world and shove it in your stomach at the same time, it just goes against genetically how we're made, you know.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to bring that to the awareness forefront so people start working with it. I'm sure there's people that are going to be able to figure this out better than me and teach it better than me, but I just recognize it's one of those overlooked things that's really important. So that's why I'm trying to bring up awareness and get us all thinking about this together, you know?
Yeah. So what I'm curious about then is, let's say someone does eat a clean diet, 100%, but they got all the wrong food combinations. What would you think it would do to that person over time?
Well, a lot of the common problems in society, um, blood sugar issues, I'm prone towards that and I learned that and I have my metabolism really under control now. I was diabetic and I didn't even know it, man. I got a glucose meter and I was just off the charts.
And at
And
what age? Sorry, were you in your 20s when this happened?
no, I figured this out about 4 years ago, probably.
Okay.
And something happened to me one day that I couldn't explain in a competition of sorts. I won't go into that, but I knew something was going on with my body that I couldn't figure out, and that was the last thing I expected. Because all my life I didn't eat refined sugar, I knew that could lead to diabetes. So the last thing in my mind was like that I would ever have a health condition
Yeah.
along those lines. But it turns out now that I have a glucose meter, even when you eat organic foods and they're all healthy foods, but I'm combining things that just my metabolism can't handle that at the same time. So my blood sugar's going off the charts, and when you have excessive blood sugar floating around in your body, it glycates and damages your proteins. That's how you damage organs and age yourself, so to speak, over time. So even with healthy foods, when you're combining them in a way you can't digest right, it's damaging the body, you know.
Okay. Now let's say someone would be taking, say, your vitality stack and really maximizing every system in their body, and they're incorporating improper food combinations once in a while. Do you think that would be fine, or should they still take like a digestive enzyme in that case?
Well, I don't worry about what people do once in a while, you know. Even myself, I eat an improper food combination once in a while. It's not like I'm a total Nazi about it. If I know I'm going to, like if I'm going out to eat and I'm just going to have fun and eat all kinds of stuff, I'll take some digestive enzymes with me.
Okay.
That's where I consider them to really shine because it's like now I can do this and not worry about it, you know. But at the same time, the reason I don't tell people to just do that all the time is because it's like anything. You don't want your body to become dependent on those. So I don't tell people, use digestive enzymes with every meal to try to digest more food, because if you're eating proper food combinations, you want your body to do that for itself, so it's good at producing its own enzymes. But like when I know I'm going to eat something that shouldn't be combined, that's when I take the enzymes just to cover me.
Okay. Excellent. Now, one thing that I don't think I've heard people address is if you're following a prolonged fasting diet, right? Let's say 20 hours of fasting, 4 hour eating window, or even less. Let's just assume one meal a day. How are you supposed to get all your nutrients in um, if the food combinations is a problem? Like you want to get all your protein, your carbs, your fat. I mean, carbs, it's like you're gonna have to sacrifice one if you're
Yeah.
doing it all in one meal, right? So like,
Yep.
do you have the one meal with the digestive enzymes, or would it be better to have like two smaller meals later during the day?
Yeah. Most people who, like you were saying, if you sacrifice carbs, say you're going on a real low carb diet, you could easily do a one meal that way and get all your
Yeah.
micros, include a lot of good greens and this and that, and your essential oils and this, your essential proteins. But if you're not doing that and you do want to have more of a full diet, that's what I usually suggest to people. I say give yourself like a 4 hour window and eat the meal that's going to digest faster first. So,
Yeah.
say you're going to have like some starches and stuff, eat that meal first, and then probably 2 to 3 hours later, for most people, your stomach's going to be totally empty and ready to go. It'll be in your small intestine, like you might still feel kind of full, but your actual stomach, where the breakdown starts, that's what we're waiting for to empty out.
Right.
Once it's past that point, you can bring in that next meal, and so usually I tell people, eat your faster digesting meal first. A few hours later, you can have the heavy one that you're going to go to bed and grow on.
Okay. Perfect. And getting into the macros, talk about macros because you mentioned carbs very briefly. Um, I understand there is a genetic component to this, right? Like you've talked a lot about yourself, how you have more of like a caveman type metabolism. So, what do you feel would say benefit the majority of people, if we can even quantify that, like macro wise?
Well, from all my research, I would have a pretty good educated guess that I think the average would be somewhere around, hmm, for most people it's going to be lower on fats than what it is for me, maybe in 10 to 20% range. And then for non-athletes, non-lifters, protein could be way lower.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you're eating excess protein, even us, if we're eating excess protein, we're just putting our bodies through a lot of extra work than they need to be going through. So, a more sedentary modern day person maybe, I don't know, like 15, 20% protein, and the rest would be like healthy plant-based carbs. Because in all my research, it seems like if you average everybody on the planet, about an 85% range plant-based and then maybe 15% animal products is a good estimate of what's probably most optimal. But again, that's an average because, like you're saying, there's big genetic fluctuations.
Right.
I'm one of those people that can live on no carbs and do just fine. I even lived on basically a raw meat diet for years, and I did great. And other people not so much. So that's when I started to realize, okay, there's something very different going on genetically as far as diet. I wanted to be just full on vegan because to me that's an ideal, to not have to exploit any living thing.
Right.
And some people can really pull that off and be at their best. I did well, and that's why I feel qualified. I can help a lot of people improve their vegan diet, at least as an athlete. But it's still way too high carb for me, basically. And since I got that glucose meter and I've been monitoring everything I consume, it's like, being that that's my health tendency, it's really extra important for me to keep my blood sugar in a healthy range. So it turns out that for me, that's a very hunter-gatherer, high fat, high protein, not so much the starchy stuff. And my body hates grains, hates dairy. So I basically have a primitive hunter-gatherer digestive tract I've figured out. And I don't know how rare that is. It's not the most common thing. I think I'm pretty extreme on one end of the spectrum digestive.
What I find interesting though is that you have like Viking genetics, but you're not able to handle dairy, which is
Yeah,
very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. You know what it is I'm Native American too. I don't look it like really on the outside, but I I know that. Check this out. When the Vikings visited North America a long time ago,
Yeah.
they interacted with you probably know this. They interacted with the Native Americans a little. They gave them some dairy like as a gift,
Okay.
but then when they drank it, they got sick and they thought the Vikings poisoned them. They all attacked them. They got like all their bows and arrows, and
Yeah, yeah.
Vikings never understood what even happened. They got chased off the land. They had to leave because all these arrows were just coming at them, and they were like, "Those guys are crazy. We don't even know what we did." But it turns out that the Native American genetics just can't handle dairy at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I'm basically that way.
Okay. But like how much percentage do you have of Native American? Because like you look mostly Viking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm at least an eighth. It's not a whole lot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You can see it in my brother. If you saw him, he looks. You could see it. Yeah, and I tend to look like my Scandinavian and Celtic ancestors. But it's just one of those things. It's like which of your genes are showing right on the surface, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
more in your internal organs and stuff.
Absolutely. Okay, that's cool. So since we're talking about different builds and stuff like that, let's talk about your stats, right?
Yeah.
What's your height, your weight, some of your measurements, just for the viewers
Okay.
to understand.
Sure. The ones I know, 6'2", 240. Arms right now are 20 and a half inches cold. Legs are about 28 and a half cold, but they're coming back up to 29, which is where they were. And then I plan to take them further. I want to aim for that big 30. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll see. But let's see what other stats. I don't know. I don't really know any of my neck's 20, but I don't know like my chest. It's big, big upper back and chest. Those that'd probably be my most impressive measurement if I knew what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
I I'm not even. How do you technically measure your chest? Do you go around the shoulders or?
Chest, you gotta like lift your armpits up and just
Okay.
bring it all around. But then
Okay.
if you want to measure your upper back, you gotta go all around. But then that also gets your chest and your shoulders. But that's your real mass measurement.
Okay.
And I'd be curious to see yours, but you're probably over 60, easy,
Yeah.
which would be like crazy.
Yeah, I need to do that. I'll do that. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, it'd be cool to put it on camera. You know, wrap the whole thing around you. It'll be
Yeah.
fun to see. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I was, even I remember as a kid, I had wide set shoulders and like a big rib cage, you
Yeah.
know, which is good because I had a big head too. Like my head was full size when I was a little kid, and people used to make fun of me, you know.
Okay.
But then my shoulders and chest kind of caught up to it, and like yourself, I'm very torso dominant, and I I think I'd rather prefer that than being like limb dominant, like some people are,
Hmm.
because I feel like when your special project is your arms, it's easier to put in all the extra work there than it would be the other way around. Like if you had great arms, but you had a lot of trouble bringing up chest and back, that sounds like a lot of work to me.
It does sound like a lot of work, eh? Yeah, that's true. But what's cool about you though is that you still built up to have some of the biggest natural arms around. Like some
Yeah,
people would say it's even impossible. And I've heard
yeah,
people accuse you of things based off those arms alone. Not your
right.
back, not everything else, but just off the arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny that somebody picked the big round number of 20, like magically that's the cutoff point, you
Yeah.
know? Like it's okay to be 19 and three quarters, but once you hit 20, that's impossible naturally. That's like why, it's a quarter inch more. And what really helped me was on arms. I would say I really got my arms up where they need to be to go with my body starting about 3 years ago. Um, Actually, some of Rich Piana's arm training videos, and then I got the idea of doing the daily arm feeders, and that was working pretty well. And then I added
Yeah.
the occlusion bands to my daily arm training, and that really helped. I feel like maybe one of my limitations on arms was they didn't hold blood as well as some of the other parts of my body. So I feel like I've stretched all the vessels inside of them now to where they actually hold more fluid. They
Hmm.
just more full. And also the fascia stretching. I think that's another thing that people say, oh, I have bad genetics in this muscle or that muscle. And it's probably not that the muscle itself doesn't want to grow. It's just that the fascia around it is too damn tight to let it grow. So getting really pumped and then stretching that muscle while it's at maximum pump, that's another tip I like to give people because I feel like each time you do that, it loosens your fascia just enough that'll let you get a little more gains from that workout.
Hmm. So, but before you started doing all this type of training, what was your arm measurement?
Oh man. Well, going back, I was stuck in like the 18 and a half range for a long time,
Okay.
even as well over 200 pounds. And it was mostly triceps. My biceps always came along pretty well, but I had a hard time figuring out how to target my triceps. And I think you can relate on this. I think part of it was being so shoulder and back dominant and stuff. It's hard to figure out how to target your arms as hard as you want to sometimes.
Hmm.
And so it became my special project. I tell people now I've probably put my triceps through 3 times as many training sessions as everything else just to get them up to where they go with the rest of my body. They're
Yeah.
not even a strong point, but they're adequate now. So that makes me really happy. But if people knew how much extra work I've put in just to get my arms up to where they're good and they go with everything else, man, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I
It's a
get it, man. Because over here I have like got this really wide back. I got good shoulders, chest, everything. But these arms just don't grow, man. So I've been doing everything under the sun to get them to grow. I'm doing nucleus overload. I'm gonna try the occlusion as well. But I get what you mean when it's like they just don't look proportional to the rest of your
yeah,
body. It's kind of annoying, if you will.
it is. It is. And it it's really been a game of just winning by I've gotten smarter. I've gotten smarter in my tricep training. I've developed angles that work a little better for me. But a lot of it's just been putting in the extra work and the extra time.
Yeah.
People look at me and they think, okay, how do I get built like you in like a year? And I'm like, well, I'm not saying you can't, but this took me over 20 years. It's not like it was easy and it's not like it happened fast.
Hmm.
And there were definitely stages where certain things were lagging and that showed. Now it's really just my calves. My calves are the last
Yeah.
frontier where
But that's because you didn't train them for that whole time, you know.
yeah, exactly.
So at least it's a nice little project, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But in regards to, sorry, I told you the cat would be a problem. In regards to the arms, what do you think about the advice that all you should do is close grip bench press?
Oh, no, 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 no. No, I tried that kind of thing, and that really left me disappointed because, no matter how much I ever pressed, I got a nice outer head. They got kind of wide from the back, but I never had a long head. And so from the side, they just looked flat,
Yeah.
like there was nothing sticking off the back of my arm. And this went on for, 10 years of frustration. It's like it doesn't matter what I press, they're not getting, my triceps are shit.
Yeah.
And finally, I realized, just from reading a little bit, that, hey, man, you can't develop that sweep. You can't get that long head by just doing presses, or most people can't. So, so my tricep training became very much more long head focused after that. And that's really, even though my long head's not, it's not astounding, but it's there now, and it really adds to
Yeah.
the picture.
So when you isolate your arms, do you only do long head work, or do you still try to hit the lateral head? With,
I definitely hit all the heads. I kind of rotate between exercises. I just make sure that, like, for example, this morning I did a tricep feeder, and I started with presses and I repped it until those were getting kind of hard, and then I immediately switched over to like a stretch position long head with ropes, and I finished the rest of my reps. And when I do those arm feeders, I just go 100 reps without stopping. So I do one thing and then I just jump right onto the next and finish my reps. But I always include long head work for triceps now because that's what's playing catch up in my case.
right. And when you do the arm feeders, how many exercises per session? Is it really just you do the rope behind the head, 100 repetitions, and you go into the curls, 100 repetitions, or how do you go about it?
A lot of days it is. It's just I'll pick one exercise, one of my favorites, and do all the reps that way. And I'd say maybe a third of the time I end up doing about two exercises. I'll pick two of my favorites. Like this morning, I did presses and then I went into the overhead extensions. And what I'm doing now is I'm doing biceps, triceps every other day because the occlusion bands, they get a
Yeah.
massive pump in the whole arm. So they do a really good feeder from my biceps today, which are really sore from all the heavy stuff I've been doing with them. So I figure I don't even need to do reps today. I'll just let that blood pump in there from the tricep training. And then they'll be a little bit more recovered tomorrow if I want to lift some more. Because I'm kind of getting into a lot of lifts right now that are real heavy on biceps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I rearranged it. But that's something I didn't have that option before I used the occlusion bands because in order to get the pump on both the bis and tris, I had to do both each day.
Hmm.
Now I realized, man, I'm getting a super pump even in the side of the arm I'm not using. So why not just focus one at a time that way and have a
Right.
little recovery that way
Yeah.
too?
And the bands that you're using, did you buy them online, or it's just something that you hooked up yourself?
I bought them online. I basically just bought whatever was on sale, but I've been really happy. They don't, some of them have broken. I mean, they don't have the longest durability, but I got them so cheap and I got a lot of them and they're working pretty well. And really, you're one of the main reasons I even got bands. I was watching some of the stuff you were doing and I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I
Cool.
gotta have some of those. And and also, when you max out what your bar can hold, bands
Yeah.
are
You got
awesome.
no. You got no choice after. Like, what are you gonna put on? You're gonna hang weights?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even have space for like enough objects anymore, and bands are just and of course you can do so many things that don't involve regular gravity like free weights. You can do so many
Exactly. Yeah.
angles.
What I find cool is that, especially for a home gym, it acts as a form of a cable
Yeah,
because of the
yeah,
angles, and you get really good timed attention as well. You can squeeze everything throughout the entire range of motion, and also that as you're going through the range of motion, the bands lengthen, so it becomes heavier at the
yeah,
lockout. So it's more of a peak contraction type thing. Like when you do
yeah.
your push downs, your flies, everything. Like I went to a gym a few weeks ago just because my friend invited me, and when I went on the cable station, the first thing I noticed is how weird it felt. It felt so uneven during the range of motion, and that's because I've been using bands for all these months. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love them, man. So I got to thank you there because it's one of these things where, like you say, when you're working out at home, you have limited equipment, but your creativity blossoms because of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And man, adding bands into the equation, I know there's like 10,000 things I haven't even thought of yet that they're going to help me with. Because almost every time I play around with them, it's like, oh wow, that's cool. Now
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
do that. So yeah, that's kind of it's one of those things where I think gym bros see bands, oh, they're little colorful rubber things. That's for wimps.
Yeah.
They're not thinking, it's not about how you look. It's about you know, what are you really putting into this? Forget about what somebody else thinks and think about how can I best serve my goal, you know? And
Mm,
if these help me with my goal, who cares how it looks?
exactly.
It, it's a really good innovation. I'm loving it. So,
I'm glad you're enjoying it. So, like, how many months have you been, or years have you been using the bands now?
oh, not, I think I got my first pack when my first channel was up because of you.
Wow.
Yep. I have very, very little time under my belt so far, but I'm loving it, you know,
Okay. Yeah,
because
there's a whole man. I can only imagine what you're gonna come up with those
yeah,
weights because you could hook it up to everything. You could do it on presses. You could even do it on rows. Like it's amazing, you know. And what most people
yeah,
don't realize about the bands is that you can add it to straight weight. Most
yeah,
like you said, most people who do bands, they think it's some sissy thing where you grab a light little band and you do little exercises here and there. But if you attach it to a barbell, like what you're doing on your Zercher list, for example, you can get hundreds of pounds out of them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's such an illusion. They don't look as cool as those big
Yeah.
plates hanging there, but hey, it's weight, man. It's resistance.
Exactly. And I know you feel it, especially on rack pulls. It pulls you the hell down when you're using
It
those
does.
bands.
It does. It actually, I sort of feel like if I load, say, 900 pounds or whatever my bar can hold, just free weights, and then say strip that down to 500 and put 400 on in bands,
Yeah.
for some reason on a rack pull, it actually feels a little bit more challenging to
Yeah,
me with
it does.
bands.
It does. I think it's because it affects the movement pattern a little bit.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it, it makes it more like a Smith machine where it's really just going up and down in a straight line. It's not moving as much because the
right.
bands are anchoring your bar, you know?
Yeah, so it won't even let you lean quite as
Exactly. You can't
flat.
even cheat it as much. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I also think that it pulls you down a bit differently too. Just the way that you attach it and everything, it attacks your body a bit differently.
it is. It is. It's very special. And people, you know, this is why I don't mean to insult people, but I'm constantly pointing out the limitations of very
Yes.
conventional training because it's like conventional training in this day and age. It almost means like I'm not willing to do anything better, you know,
Yeah,
because oh, bands those aren't going to do anything. Are you kidding me? There's so many great ways you can improve your physique and your strength. You just got to be willing, you know.
for sure. Well, one thing that I really like is your rants on these conventional ideas. Oh man, they always bring a smile across my face, you know? Like your video
Yeah.
on dropping the big three, that was amazing. The Q&As, you know? And even when you rant about a particular group, if you will. I like those. I like that a lot, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it is really fun, and I hope people, you know, a few people they got their feelings kind of hurt, and then I ended up talking to them privately, like, look, man, I
Yeah.
don't, I just got to state my case. I got to defend my position. I do it in an aggressive way, but I don't. It should be fun in a
Yeah, for
sense,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to take it that personal, but if you call me a fake natty and you say I'm stupid, none of these methods work. Well, obviously, I got to stand up and say what I think about that, or how can I even run a channel if I'm not willing to represent what I believe in? So when people challenge that, hey, fine, let's lock horns, let's do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't really mean anything that personal from it. I just get really fired up and aggressive in the moment, and it's mostly just the passion of the topic. It's not really about the person, you know.
Right. And it's like it's funny because you change personalities almost, you know? As you call it, it's a full yang mode, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
There's like, okay, that's it. You know, we're going full male energy here. This is going to be all about aggression and fire, and we're going to burn up any weakness. You know, no weakness allowed now,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
now.
yeah.
But you know, like you say, there is another side to this, and I like to be more balanced most of the time and be, um, you know, kind of wise and share with people that there's two sides to this. There's a yin and a yang. Even if you just want to look at it at the basic level, the yin side is your recovery and your nutrition. You
Hmm.
know, everything can't be yang all the time. We can't just um, go fight train go fight fight. There's a whole other side, you know, and it's just as important. And they support each other. So the more a person becomes balanced, you know, your yang becomes stronger as your yin becomes stronger. And you know, like in ancient Chinese medicine, they knew that they would diagnose a person like this part of your yin is weak, and they'd have all these different names for which organs that means or whatever. But the idea was, um, if you don't have a strong enough yin, you're going to fall on the battlefield because you're just going to run out of juice out there, no matter how brave and no matter how determined and how fiery and confident, all that yang energy, it needs to be supported by this other side, you know?
Exactly.
Society's kind of overlooked all that in recent history, so it's not that I'm the
Yeah.
full-on expert
Yeah.
on yin and yang, but it's a basic concept people need to be thinking about.
Yeah. I feel that they're usually, most people anyway, they're too much in one side. You know, like the men are going to be too aggressive, and the women, well, actually, the women, I don't really have a problem with too much femininity, I'll be honest. But
Yeah,
it's still, there needs to be a balance, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I guess that's that's why you like that energy. You know, that's why you want to be around a woman like that
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
balancing.
Yeah, sure.
It's balancing to your energy, and then like you're picking up on some of that. It makes you healthier, and same for her because you got that confidence. I can get it done. I'm on, the other things, more fiery energy, and they complement each other. But at the same time, we all have both those elements within us as an individual, and it's something where society has all these weird like, oh, in order to be a man you got to do this, you got to wear this, or you got to say that, and it's all nonsense. It's just arbitrary nonsense. Like,
Yeah.
why limit yourself? You don't have to. I know one thing: being a man is not about just trying to imitate social patterns just so you can fit in. That doesn't make you feel confident. It doesn't make you feel powerful. So anyway, I don't mean to offend people, but sometimes I just can't help but get really like fired up and let it rip. And I laugh my ass off too watching those videos. When I go back the next day, it's like, good Lord, some of the things I said on there, pretty funny and pretty insulting. And I hope the person doesn't even take it too seriously.
Yeah.
They just know that, like, hey, that's my stance, man. And if you're going to talk shit to me, I'm not afraid to, let you have it and tell you what I think. So,
I hear you. And I'm sure, of course, it comes with good intentions, you know? It's
yeah,
not you
yeah,
just trying to be a dick or whatever, or being negative. It's there's a purpose behind what you're saying, you know?
yes, yes. I wouldn't have any passion or fire if I didn't really believe in the point. I wouldn't roast anybody or fight with anybody over anything that I don't think is really important. And I'm just like yourself, I'm thinking about what people are seeing, how they're being influenced, and what's in their best interest. And and when somebody's message I really don't believe it's in everybody's best interest, I'm totally okay saying that and fighting with it.
Absolutely. So let's go back to training, right? Let's
Hmm.
talk about the various muscle groups. So we covered arms. I want to talk about my favorite muscle group, the traps.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've seen even in your Nether Better upgrade manual, the rack pulls above the knee, and you've been using them a lot, and you did it with transcendent training. So I just want to know, like, what has your experience been with the rack pulls above the knee?
Okay, absolutely. Like yourself, I always had good back genetics. I have a good shape and everything, and good mind muscle connection. And to back up a little bit, um, a long time ago, I learned that what I was training first in a workout was getting the most gains, and I used to always hit my back first. So fast forward years later, I've invented the nether row because I was kind of disappointed about. I just felt like rows there was something missing. Like I couldn't hit the lower trap rhomboid area as hard as I wanted.
Right.
So nether rows worked well for that. But then I'm watching your videos and I see you doing these heavy rack pulls, and I'm like, dude, that looks so cool. I want to try it. I wasn't even paying attention to the point yet. I just thought it looked cool, and I went and tried it. And then my traps were devastated, and they start growing like visibly. And I was like, oh my God. So then I started listening to what you're saying, and I'm like, wow, man, he's really onto something. And he's getting all this shit for it. He's getting all these people like, oh, you're an idiot. That's a short range of motion, and you can't build muscle that way. And I'm like, well, look at him. He's got the evidence. It's right in front of your eyes. So I experimented with it, and sure enough, it's a tremendous trap builder, and I don't think it's dangerous at all. Like some people are trying to say, your back is in a much better position
Yeah.
as long as you have some core integrity and you're not going to,
Right.
wobble around like this. It seems very safe to me, even with high loads and high reps, and it's an enjoyable lift, and tremendous trap development. I went from a great overall back to a great overall back with like superb traps
Okay.
since using the rack pull. Yeah, it's noticeable.
That's really awesome. And
Yeah,
when you did that transcendent rack pull, holy moly! I can only imagine what they must have felt like those traps, like the day after,
oh,
because
they were so sore,
yeah,
man. Even like right here where they connect to the neck, it was like so tender I couldn't even touch it. But it was a good feeling. I was a little stiff like this for a couple days because I couldn't even stretch them out. I was like, oh, but I was glad I did it.
Yeah.
Probably gained a pound or two of muscle in my traps than that.
Yeah, it cuts deep, you know?
Yeah.
Like I did half your weight, and my traps were sore for like 8 days, you know?
Oh yeah. But
Which doesn't happen too often.
you were going fast too. I watched that video. You're just like bam, 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 bam. I wanted to do it like that, but what was weird was the weight from the lifting straps. It was cutting off circulation
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that like my fingers were throbbing and then they started to go numb. So I had to take the strap off and try to shake my hand real
Yeah,
quick,
I had
put
the
it back.
same problem. Actually, my wrist got cut up from doing that,
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
annoying. I really like the transcendent training. I think it really it changes your mindset and
Hmm.
how you lift and all that, and it gets you stronger, it gets you bigger. But I really hate the fact that it cuts up your wrists. And when I do rack pulls in particular, it might just be my straps, but they tend to roll off after some time, and it just
Yeah,
gets harder and harder to grip. And actually, my forearms get really pumped from that. When I'm done a
yeah.
set, like they're throbbing in pain because you're gripping it so much, you know?
Yep, me too. I noticed that when I did that set too. Um, and I can see my forearms are not one of my biggest things, but I actually could see a little bit of gains on them after that workout. I
Right.
noticed because that's 100. I mean, anytime you're adding up that much tonnage, my God, German volume training's what 10 sets of 10,
Yeah,
and
10 sets of 10.
we're doing that all in one. We're just shoving that whole workout into one set. That's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, but it really does tap into your recovery though. Like that's
Oh
something you're screwed after that. You can't do anything. It just
yeah,
yeah.
I underestimated it big time, and I tried to do a semi-heavy workout a couple days later, and I was like, why am I so weak? And then I was like, okay, okay, I get it. That is no joke. And so I had to do like a week of just like light stuff and arm feeders and accessory work. So for me with transcendent training, I think it's something to pick a certain lift every once in a while and be like, I'm going to do transcendent training on this because I know by
Exactly.
the time I get to 100 reps on this, I'll have all new gains in that area. But as far as like year round, especially those of us that like to train a little more often, it just digs too
It's too
deep into it.
aggressive. Yeah, it really
Yeah,
is. No, I agree with that. Use it as a shocker once in a blue
yeah,
moon, maybe just once a month for the rack pulls, for example. Maybe not with 1,000 pounds, but you load up some decent weight, do it once in a while because it does break through plateaus, absolutely.
yeah,
And you can't
yeah,
tell me that it won't when you go from like 50 reps to 100 or whatever.
yeah. And especially for a guy like Sam or Neil, that's
Yeah,
with his body type. I think he's getting really good gains from it because his workout style being really extremely ectomorphic, he's done better hitting something like that and then waiting a week or 10 days or whatever after a full body session, and he's getting better gains that way than if he worked out more frequently.
yeah,
But that's one of those things. It's That's one reason I like his channel already, is that he already figured out something like that each person has a different metabolism. Each person has a different body structure, and you may find that a certain way of working out is more key for you than it is for the next person.
exactly. I mean, it's all individual, and even when it comes down to exercises, it's anthropometry, it's leverages, and people are vastly different.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we can talk about this and have fun, but I'll go back to the muscle groups for now.
yeah,
I'm sure you
yeah,
can imagine what I'm thinking right now. But
yeah, yeah.
for the uh, for the rack pulls, right? Do you feel that to build your traps? Because right now, obviously, they're very up there. Would you ever consider doing shrugs again, or power shrugs just
No,
once in a while, or you just don't feel like it? Like there's no need.
no, I would, if somebody said, hey, let's see how much you can shrug just for fun, I might do that. But as for a trap workout, no, I wouldn't even bother. It's just the same reason I swore off the big three. It's not that there's anything wrong with those lifts. It's just that there are things that are working better. And why would I put in the effort on something that I already know this over here is going to give me better gains? And I definitely, from rack pulls, I get way better gains. Shrugs always worked okay, but you really nailed it with that heavy stretch overload on the traps. Certain muscles definitely respond to that really well. I think they all respond to that, but some better than others. And I, I'm surprised sometimes, even when I look at my own back and I notice the gains from it, from doing the rack pulls. It's
Okay.
like, man, your traps are they're like grizzly humps. I can squeeze them together and pinch your fingers and make them disappear in there. It's getting so thick.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, shrugs are kind of fun to show off what you can shrug, but they never had that effect on my traps, not even close.
Okay. So let's say someone was trying to build really, really big traps, right? What would be like a standard workout? Something that you would recommend for, say, most lifters watching this channel?
Um, you can't go wrong with a really high set of above the knee rack pulls. What I would probably do is I'd have them do two different workouts for their traps. The first one would be all above the knee rack pull base because I feel like there's nothing better, especially for the upper half of your traps, to get them popping way up off you. And then I would throw in a nether rows workout later in the week just to try to position their body where they're hitting the lower trap rhomboid area a little bit harder. And I think those to me, there's no other exercises. Those are number one and two for traps for me.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't even waste my time on aiming. Well, one other thing that works really well, but very few people I would recommend it to is the whole, behind the back pull-ups. If
Yeah.
you can do that, if you have the shoulders that can do that, that's good too for trap thickness. But it's not as good as rack pulls and nether rows, and it's more dangerous for more people. So I would say that between those two moves, we I think people, if they would use those two moves, they could build better traps now than anybody's seen so far in history. I just
Okay.
think, you know, I think we've taken it to a new level now, what you can do with traps. I really
Yeah.
believe that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The nether row, would you say it can replace all forms of rowing? Like you don't even have to do a barbell row or a Penley row or a cable row. Like if you just did nether rows, would you be fine?
The one place it lacks is rear delts.
Okay.
It kind of hits them, but as far as everything on the back, yes, you can well, no. One other thing, Yates rows for hitting the
Lower
low.
lats, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty key. But as far as all your more conventional rows, I don't use them. And I'm once in a while for fun, I'll do a few, but I just don't need them anymore for building my back. So, so yeah,
Cool.
I honestly believe it can replace all that
Okay,
because
so
you could.
basically it's like three things. It's rack pulls above the knee, the nether rows, and then the Yates rows for the lower lats, right?
Yep.
And then obviously you do chin ups as well and pull ups and things of that nature.
Right, right.
But do
Chin-ups
you
and pull-ups.
sorry,
I
go
don't.
on.
Oh, I'm sorry, brother.
No,
I
no, go
don't
ahead.
even. I don't even need chin-ups and pull-ups as far as just the back development.
Hmm.
But I love the functionality of it. So I'm
Exactly.
always going to keep that in there.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. I was gonna say you're doing the pull ups and all that for the athletic benefits, right?
Yeah, yeah. I want to always be really strong at that because it's such a great functional strength. Not just for showing off, but like in the real world, that type of climbing strength is just so good to have. So
Hmm.
yeah, even if I can't, even if that's not needed anymore to make my back bigger, I'm always going to just be including that.
Okay. Would you say that it can replace the Yates row though?
Like weighted chin
Yeah,
variations.
weighted chins. Would that be able to replace the Yates row in terms of
I
the
think
lat thickness and all that?
I think it can for most people. I think like you were saying earlier, the physiology of our geometry is a little different. So how one person hangs under that bar is a little different than the next. But I think for most people, based on your hand positioning, you can find a hand position to do like heavy weighted negatives and nail your lower lats,
Yeah.
definitely.
And here's a question. Here's an interesting one. Do you think that one arm chin ups provide very unique athletic abilities, like say increasing your punching power and things of that nature?
Yeah, they do. I think so because now I haven't felt what it feels like to be somebody else and do them, but when I do them, um, my lats get nailed way harder than any version of two-handed pull-ups. I don't know why. Maybe that's just my
I
physiology.
think it's the angle because
Yeah.
you seen Athlete X when he does the one arm lat pull downs.
Right,
I
right, right.
think that's the effect that you're getting.
Okay, yeah. So you got that, and then you got the way you're swinging, and you got to like coordinate your core. Obviously, that's going to have athletic carryover to anything you do, because whether a person knows it or not, when you're doing one-arm chin-ups, you're automatically trying to reduce your swing and get yourself the most reps you can. So that mental coordination of how to balance and control your whole body to give you more efficiency to just get one more rep, that's training all kinds of stuff
Yeah,
that like
sure.
applies to other sports. And then also, as you asked about punching power, I know that I remember reading this in a boxing book a long time ago, that people don't realize that it's not how strong your forward muscles are that actually throw the punch. The limiting factor is usually the deceleration muscles.
Hmm.
And because of your proprioceptors in your body, it'll limit how hard you can throw that punch because it's concerned about pulling something back there. So if you have a lot of upper mid back support there, your body will allow you to throw a harder punch. I know that much for sure.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So what? Okay, we could talk more about that after, but let's go back to the different muscle groups for now, and then we'll talk more about the athletic type training. And I want to get into like the Jefferson rack pulls and stuff like that. Actually, let's talk about the Jeffersons right now. Screw it.
All right.
Um, so what have you found to be beneficial? Like, because you conventional deadlifts, I know you did that for a long time, but you said it always felt like a back snap, right? And you
Yeah.
didn't find that it was the most athletic move per se.
No.
So since you introduced Jeffersons, like what have you noticed compared to say a conventional pull?
Well, my back development is obvious from it. It's more so. Um, the core development. Now, me, I'm not actually aiming for that, but I do talk to a lot of people who are. They want as big and
Yeah,
blocky and strong a core as they can get. Definitely beefs up your core.
it does. Yeah.
Lats, and that's probably the fourth key player that I could have added, on the list of how to hit your lats is when you know how to use a Jefferson that way. And I tell people all the time, I know everybody's mind muscle is a little different, but I've found that just by positioning my back a little bit different or my legs, I can totally emphasize one lat. I can emphasize my butt. I can do hamstrings. Whereas with a conventional deadlift, I never felt like I had any choice as to what I'm aiming for. It was like, it's really awkward. It feels like you're bending over to touch your toes, and then for some reason, you're going to try to lift the heaviest thing you can in that position, which to me just is like, nobody does that in the real world. Your body doesn't do that. Nobody does that. So why is that the all important test of strength when it's just like unnatural? It doesn't even make sense. So, from the first time I used a trap bar and then the Jefferson, it was like, oh wow, this makes sense. This has real world application. Your feet are staggered so you can shoot forward or back.
Yeah.
Anything you do in real life, you're going to be like that. So it just, and then, I can pull quite a bit with it. And it doesn't, even though I was a little nervous about pulling in a twisted position
Yeah.
just because I had never done that, I wondered if there was like spinal danger. But having gone really heavy now, I feel no risk of anything trying to be tweaked. It feels like a much safer deadlift actually than a standard.
Hmm. Well, I think that's because the weight is right underneath you.
Yeah, yeah. Makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense.
So do you prefer Jeffersons over trap bar deadlifts, or are they both kind of equal?
You know, um, right now I'd say they're equal on my list of awesome deadlift alternatives. Um, If I had to pick one, I think I'd go with the Jefferson just because it's a little more versatile overall. The
Hmm.
way you can kind of aim for legs, you can aim more for back. The trap bar, at least my trap bar, and maybe I didn't get a big enough one, but I feel like I can't get my legs as wide as I want. I don't have as many options on foot
Okay.
position.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, and plus my trap bar doesn't hold enough weight.
Yeah,
It
that's the
only,
problem. Yeah.
yeah, it's dumb. I should have thought of that when I bought it. I should have looked for a custom one or something, but anyway.
I mean, you're an innovative guy. Would it be possible to weld the sleeves, like the edge, so you can carry
Yeah,
more weight?
yeah. I suppose I could take it to my dad has a machine shop, and I could have him, weld a pipe or a pole that's the same size, and then grind it, get it machined to where it's exactly the same, so the plates will slide on.
Yeah.
I may have to do that. That's a good idea.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you do trap bar lifts though, is it like 9 out of 10 times the high handles, the low handles, and the rack? What is your preferred method?
I really prefer the high because I just like to lift more and be comfortable doing it. But usually, just out of concerns for health and mobility and all that, I'll include some sets. Like if I'm doing a trap bar workout, I'll include some sets with the low handles.
Hmm.
But I don't overdo it. I don't even push myself to the max on that. I
Right,
just do
right, right.
some sets, keep my mobility, and then I'll flip it over and use the high handles and work up to something heavy. That's
Okay.
usually how I go about it. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's a question about the Jefferson, right? because it's so versatile, right? You can do so much with it in terms of the positions, and I find that just a few inches of range of motion can affect like the poundages. Like you can probably add 100 pounds more just if you increase the height just a little bit, you know.
Yes.
So what do you feel is the most beneficial pin height per se in your rack or inches off the floor? If we're just
Okay.
talking about general strength, say fighting, for example.
Okay. I found my sweet spot on the Jefferson, and it's pin one,
Pin one,
which,
okay.
yeah, for me, that leaves my tallest weight plate about 4 inches off the ground.
Right.
And it's phenomenal the amount of weight I can lift from there that I wouldn't be able to do from off the ground. And and the thing is, like even as a fighter, when you take somebody down, you're not going to crouch down into the lowest possible position. You
Exactly.
get
Yeah.
just up to their arms. That's where your strength is. So it's very relevant, to everything an athlete would do, football player, anybody. And I
Right.
think when you can lift hundreds of pounds more from only 4 inches higher,
It's
you
crazy.
know,
Yeah.
power and muscle that you can build, and even strengthening your tendons and stuff. It's just, that's a real sweet spot for me. Just
Okay.
that 4 inches of difference for
And it's
some
a
reason.
it's a confirmed 4 inches, like you measured and everything, right?
Yeah, I got down, and I know everybody's weight plates are a little different size, but I got down on the floor and measured, and from my tallest plate to the floor is 4 inches
Okay.
when I got it on pin one. Yeah,
Okay. And let's say your rack was able to go a little bit lower than that. Would you even bother with it? Or you would
I
say
would
screw it?
I would try it. Sure, I'd try like a 2 inch, and maybe I'll do that one of these days. I'll just lay some wood blocks down and do like a block pull and see what the difference is from the floor to
Right.
even 2 inches off the floor, because it might be a lot. It could be a huge difference.
Well, you'd be surprised. Every inch that you lose off that lift, it makes it quite harder. You'd be like
Yeah.
it's yeah. I've been experimenting with the Jefferson, and I say the worst is when it's like half an inch or an inch off the ground. That's not fun at all. It's when you go a little bit above that. I find that like 3 to 4 inches is a really good. That's a sweet
Yeah.
spot. You can't go wrong with that. You know?
Interesting. He found the same thing, and I think Sam Renil, same thing. He's using pin one
Yeah.
and loving it, going heavy.
It's excellent because it's like right below your kneecap or like a little bit above mid shin or sometimes added depending on how you position your feet. And it's
Hmm.
like you don't feel like you're gonna strain your back at all,
Yeah,
but you can
yeah,
still lift really good weights. Like it just feels right. It feels comfortable.
it does. And it goes back to this, how arbitrary everything is, because
Yeah.
when somebody invented the deadlift, the plates happened to be a certain size, and
Mm-hmm.
so everybody just started lifting that height, as if there's something magical about that particular height. When
Yep.
you might as well focus on deficits with a lighter weight, and then go 4 inches higher than a standard and go phenomenally heavy weight. And I think you're going to get a lot more out of it overall that way than just sticking to whatever arbitrary height was originally invented. I
Yep.
understand competition, you have the medium of competition you need to train for that, but for
Exactly. Yeah.
it's like, what's going to give me the most bang for my buck, from my workouts,
Mm-hmm.
more
And
relevant.
yeah, and I think people have a hard time escaping that trap, because they sincerely believe that this is the only way and that this is full range of motion, but they don't understand that it's for a specific competition. Like I
Yep.
believe competition plates need to be 17.8 inches, okay, in diameter. That's so arbitrary. It's just I have rubber plates that are 15 inches. Now, if I
Yeah.
pull off the floor, is that a real deadlift? Like, what's a real deadlift? If we know that it's like possible to do deficits, isn't that the real version?
Right,
Like
right.
when you look at the history of it, it makes sense because um, they didn't want to like get decapitated for Olympic pulls, right? So they used to use these Olympic plates, and it was calibrated for that purpose. But they just stuck with it when they started developing powerlifting and all these other sports, and it is arbitrary. It's totally, and it's not even full range. So people should be lifting with what works for their anthropometry, not off some stupid rule.
Exactly. If you're not, and you just worded that perfectly. If you're not going to compete, work with your body,
Yeah, exactly.
because like you say, if somebody wants to argue with me, oh, that's 4 inches too high, so it doesn't count for anything. Well, I could just say, well, maybe the standard deadlift doesn't count for anything because you need to be lifting from the ground itself.
Yeah,
We need to put
exactly.
the
Yeah.
bar on the ground and have the weights hanging at a deficit and lift from your toes. And it, like you say, it's all just arbitrary. So who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. And even when we talk about strongman, which is a sport that I really, really like, there's different ways that you could do the pull. Like they have the Louis Seal deadlift, where you're like, it's these big balls, right? And it's elevated off the floor. You have the
Mhm.
18-inch deadlift. And actually, when Bill Kazmar and the other guy, I forgot his name, the blonde dude, when they were battling against each other, they did like a rack pull above the knee variation. It was made out of wood. It was like this wooden thing, and the guy says it's something about being alive and deadlifting, but it was like a rack pull above the knee, you know.
Yeah.
But they thought it was a legit thing in terms of
Yeah.
like, so it is arbitrary, totally. And I feel that guys should be lifting for the range of like for their anthropometry, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And I love strongman for that. I've seen so many cool events that I wanted to try. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I
Yeah,
would
it's
be good
awesome.
at that, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have good cardio. Even those guys are so heavy, there's a lot of timed events, so they have to be able to do all that shit fast, which is really impressive.
Well, that's the thing. It's explosive cardio.
Hmm.
You're lifting heavy objects. You're being explosive with those objects, and it's endurance at the same time. People don't
Yeah.
understand how hard it is, and you got to give credit to these strongman competitors because what they're doing is not easy shit.
Yeah. They're
And
amazing athletes for
they're
sure.
very amazing indeed. And even sandbags, something as basic as that. When you bear hug that, and you take a walk with it, it's quite challenging. You feel
Yeah.
your legs cramp up, your upper back, everything. You know?
Yeah. And like, so I guess an Atlas stone, and I've never lifted one. I've never had the chance, but I imagine that's just, crazy harder than it looks.
Oh yeah, definitely very hard. You're like in a super bent over position when you lift it off. Like your back is like all the way rounded. You gotta
Yeah.
like scoop it. It's so awkward, but again, these guys are fantastic athletes, and I really respect what they do. You know?
Yeah.
And we could learn a lot from strongman competitors because of
Yep.
their high exercise selection, you know, and that
Yep.
they're always experimenting with different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, these are called the strongest men in the world. They're not called powerlifters. They're called the world's strongest
World's
men.
strongest man. Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and so they're lifting lifts that are based on that, like how strong of a lift can we do, not just how much can you stand or deadlift. It's like let's make an event where these guys can lift weights that nobody's ever even seen before and let them.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's just so exciting.
it's super exciting. Yeah, and if I had access to those implements, I'd be abusing the hell out of it. You know, like a
Yeah.
log press. That looks so fun, doesn't it? You know,
Yes, it
a
does.
yoke. Imagine walking in your backyard with a yoke with 1,000 pounds. You
Oh,
know.
oh, that's ideal. Someday, man, that's on my list. Have some land and set up strongman events.
Oh yeah, totally. So let's go back to talking about different muscle groups. Right, we keep bringing it back to that, but I want to
Yes,
cover all the major muscles, and then we'll dive into other
absolutely.
things. Okay. So
Absolutely.
we talked about the arms, we talked about the traps, we talked about upper back. Let's talk about the chest now, right?
Okay.
So most people say if you want to build a big chest, you gotta do a lot of bench press and dumbbell flies. What are your thoughts on this?
That's it worked well for Arnold, and I literally think that Arnold is as much as I like him, I think he's one of the main reasons everybody's stuck on just bench and flies. But Arnold had some of the best chest genetics. He has like the best chest genetics of anybody,
Yeah, pretty much.
and and so people assume, well, he must have done the perfect training. Well, no, he did the same training as everybody else. He probably did a little more of it when nobody was looking, but that doesn't mean that Arnold's chest couldn't have been better if he would have used even better exercises. And I'm really having fun experimenting with that lately. Um, some of my chest workouts now they involve no presses, like the one I did yesterday.
Okay.
I was using bands, and one of my subscribers invented an exercise and showed me, and I tried it, where you're kind of you're laying on your back on a little bit of an incline bench, and you're pulling the bands from behind you like a pullover,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also pulled in from the side. So you actually pull in,
Right.
crush them above your head, do a pullover all the way down, and then go back out and out.
Ah.
And it's like
Okay.
it just nails the inner chest. You can just feel it digging in and building that depth there. So I did that, and I did some nether chest shrugs just to kind of hit the upper chest, and then I did a version of another chest shrug that's kind of aimed more at the middle and lower chest. And my chest is sore today, especially on the inside, which is special because that's one of the things about the bench that never lined up. My chest get wider and it had a really nice outer profile, but it never got the depth here until I started doing these chest shrugs. And it just makes your chest look so much more impressive, even though I'm not even really lifting as heavy weights to do it, but it's just where I'm able to target the chest now and
Yeah.
make it complete. The completeness of a chest adds so much.
Yeah. And I gotta get on those chest shrugs, man, because they look very interesting. You know, I haven't really been doing any, but just standing up. Like if I do this, you could feel it. You know, so I can only imagine with weight when you execute that movement pattern.
Yeah.
Because I always said for years, right? Even I was stuck in these limited beliefs that naturals cannot have thick upper chests because I had done everything and nothing worked. And obviously, when you look at most naturals, they just don't.
Yeah.
We're taught that you have to be on a bunch of roids to thicken up that area. But then you come along and you're like, okay, upper chest shrugs. You can lift all this weight and it thickens up the area. So I think it actually will work when I started doing
Yeah.
it. And it worked for you, right? So,
Oh, absolutely. And it worked fast. Like yourself, I thought, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever have an upper chest. And after doing those for like a month, I was like, oh my gosh, I have an upper chest now. This is crazy. And what you were saying about steroid users, isn't that like a key reflection to realize that those guys don't train their upper chest very well,
hmm
between all the drugs
yeah,
and
it's
all the
drugs,
chest
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
hmm
I mean, they're able to have a pretty decent upper chest, but they've never really trained it all that well.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell guys, I say, look, I don't, I encourage people of all the benefits of staying natural. But if you are a juicer and you want to try some of this stuff, I firmly believe you can take your juiced physique to a higher level than the next guy, no matter what he's taken, because these are just better exercise selections and targeting.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's a good point. So a guy's enhanced, he watches your videos, he'll make even better gains in your upper chest than if he just did regular stuff. Because it's
Exactly.
that much more effective. Like, for
Yep.
example, take a juicer, make him do rack pulls above the knee with the enhanced testosterone and recovery, like, it would be even
Oh my
better, right?
God.
So,
Oh yeah. You could see. Oh man, I can only imagine. You could get some traps so freaky, because some of those guys, like Dorian, and he kind of stepped it up for the back, and then Ronnie and stuff. Those guys really inspire me looking at their back. But as hard as they worked and as well as they did, I really think if they'd apply some of the stuff we're doing, they could have had an even more freaky out their back.
mm,
Maybe even too much. Maybe it would be so freaky people would start to not like it. But the point is superior training or better methods are better methods. And if all other things are equal, one juice guy is going to be able to pull ahead of the next juice guy
yes,
using better
yes.
methods. So,
Okay. Now, when we talk about better methods, right? We're referring to very specific things here, yeah? Like muscle building and just general athletic performance, right? Like you're not
yep.
talking about something overly specific here. Because
Right.
obviously, like if you're a power lifter, you're good at the big three. That's what you do. And something that what you do is not going to be the best method for a power lifter, right?
Right.
But it might be
Absolutely.
the best for, say, a fighter or someone who wants to just be big and he doesn't care
Yep.
about his numbers so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I would describe my current overall, what's going on the channel as a way to have a body that's very big and strong and well built and functional to where you could quickly convert that into a sport. Like I could convert into a power lifter and start training more
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah.
and I'd have a good head start.
Mm,
I could easily convert into strongman. I could convert into bodybuilding. So I'm just telling people like my physique right now, very functional, very overall functional, strong. I'm not overly specialized
yeah.
in any of the known particular lifts, but I'm getting better gains. I'm getting better muscle gains and adding mass and getting the physique I want by training more outside the box. And if I ever did decide to compete in powerlifting, which I won't, but if I did, it wouldn't be that hard to convert over my training to really get those numbers up because you're
Yeah.
starting from a great foundation of a lot of functional strength.
Honestly, I think that's a really great way to phrase it. You're like you're not overly specialized in one thing, but if you were to convert, you would have that base and you'd be well ahead of someone else who didn't necessarily train that way. So I
Yeah.
like that. It's just like you're doing your own thing, and you
hmm
could you could be good at whatever you decide to do. So you have
Yeah.
that freedom in a sense.
Exactly. It's like your overall state of readiness. We're just talking about
Yeah.
getting you really up there to where whatever you decide to use it for, you're going to have a lot to use. That's the idea.
That's perfect.
you know.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like that. But for bodybuilding specifically, would you say that this is the next level type stuff, like the upper
Yes.
chest shrugs? Like, I
Yep.
don't think you could beat that.
Yep. I think what you've done, it's so amazing to me because you took your own physique goals and you just shared it with the world, right? And
Yeah.
you showed them that you walk what you talk, and just your channel's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow because people are like, whoa, I never exactly thought about that physique, but it's really awesome now that I'm seeing it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I love is like I my own physique goals are probably a little bit particular to me, but a lot of people love that. They just love seeing somebody walking the walk of what they talk instead of just talking it but not showing it.
Hmm.
And they really see how cool that looks. They catch your passion, and you've got, 150,000 people or something that just want to be yoked as hell now because they see how awesome that is.
Yeah.
But somebody had to show them how awesome that is, you
Right.
know. There hasn't been very much emphasis on that physique
Hmm.
from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And the back is just it's just an artistic
Yeah, it's
masterpiece.
amazing. It really is. Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, man, and I agree. Like, it's cool to be yoked. It's so cool. Like, we see too many of these guys that are just aesthetic, but they have little thin pencil necks. They got no traps. They got little stick forearms. Like for me, my whole philosophy is you want to build your neck, your traps, your upper back, shoulders, forearms, and your glutes actually, because the glutes are very athletic. Number one, and
Yeah,
it gives you that 3D dimensional pop. A lot of guys they want outer quad sweep, but that actually gives you more of like an X taper physique, which is fine if that's your goal. Like, you'll look like a Dragon Ball Z character. But the glutes, when you stand sideways, it really gives you that pop. You know, and you couple that with the upper back, it's a cool look. So that
yeah,
that was my own vision. Like I had to think really, really hard about that, but it was all my years of experience combined into one. I said, okay, what would be the most badass looking physique that is not bodybuilding or whatever? And I took from different realms. You know, I took from wrestlers, strongman competitors, all these little guys. And I'm like, okay, these are the muscle groups. And if you focus on it, you're gonna have this yoked physique. Couple that with high body fat, you're gonna be a beast. You know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a brilliant vision. I mean, that's why so many people just accuse you of, doing drugs because they see that back. They're not used to that. They're not
Bunch
used
of
to the
morons, honestly.
physique. Yeah. You just, your vision designed such a physique that has such an impact, visually, and that's a clear sign that it's working. When people just, oh, you're a liar and you're on drugs. And they don't even look closely because what I noticed, if you have a good eye for it, you can look at guys like you and me and Eric and some of the others and watch them closely, and you'll notice that, yeah, even though they're big and jacked and they're bigger and stronger than a lot of juice guys, their muscles don't look the
Yeah,
same.
they
They
look
don't.
different. They look totally different.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
totally different look if you look closely. And I
yeah,
don't think
yeah.
people have an eye for that.
You know, it's like you can't put it to words. I cannot logically explain it. You just feel it. You see it
Yeah,
and you know it. Like you can't express it. You just
yeah,
like even when I look at
exactly.
your physique, you could see that it's very big, like very muscular, very developed, but it doesn't have that Reuter look to it. It just doesn't. Even though the measurements are on point, everything doesn't have that appearance.
Exactly.
You
And
know?
and another thing that I hope people notice by watching is that those of us that take a lot longer to build up because we're doing it naturally, you have way more muscle maturity. So if some 18-year-old goes and gets on a ton of steroids and builds 21-inch arms in a year, that'll look impressive and stuff, but his arms won't have anywhere near the actual functional capacity that mine do. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
You know,
definitely. I agree. Like
there's some.
especially when you're natural, you can put on a lot more strength. I find for what you look like. Like
Yeah,
yeah, like for example, 21. Like you have 21-inch arms pumped or whatever, right?
yeah,
That's like 21 inches of pure badass performance. It's not just fluff that you develop from
right.
injecting a bunch of drugs, you know. And the
Yeah.
proof is also in what you do with the pull-ups. I don't know how many reps you did there, but I think you're chasing for like a world record. Is that you working for that?
I may, I've done 10 now,
That's crazy.
and oh, it is. And the thing is it's just like I heard you describing on a video. Sometimes I take on too many different projects at the same
Yeah.
time that I'm trying to get stronger at, and then I have to start like, okay, I need to put this one aside for a while because it's getting in the way of this one. So I don't know how fast I'm going to keep chasing the chin up record right now. I'm feeling like because I'm overloading my biceps so crazy on all these Zerker lifts, it's really limiting on my one hand pull ups right now. So I might take a little break on that and then come back to it a little down the line. But that always works for me. I tell people I always do that. I'll take a few lifts, I'll progress them past where I used to be, and then I'll just take a break. Like we were discussing 10 minutes ago or whatever, because of the way my training keeps me functionally strong in all areas, when I do go back to train one-handed chin-ups again, it won't be very long and I'll be able to pass my old mark. I can
Yeah.
always get back into it really fast.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
way it's kind of like juggling a lot of different
Right,
projects.
right, right. No, and I get that better than anyone else, man. When you're when you have all these goals, it's like you gotta. It's hard to specialize because you just want to do everything at the same time, but you can't.
Yeah,
Whenever you attempt to, it's like it affects your recovery and your performance is not as good. So you really gotta specialize and give it that time to develop.
yeah,
You know. But one of the benefits though of being natural is that it's so easy to get back into that.
yeah.
Even if you've been off for so long, you can get into one arm chins like it's nothing. In a few weeks, you're back at full performance, and you're actually getting stronger than you used to be.
Yep.
There's no cycling on and off bull, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, there's so many advantages to being natural if you look at the long-term picture.
Long term,
It's
yes.
hard, it's super hard for young guys to do that. I realize that. They're in the gym, they just want to be jacked by tomorrow. And I know that's hard to have the maturity, but that's why I guess guys like you and me, we have to assure them, hey, it is worth it. If you'll stay in there and really progress as a natural, in the long run, it's going to be more than worth it to you. It's really, there's a lot of advantages to this path. There really is. For one thing, like what's forced me to learn about health and vitality is like we were talking about. My recovery sucked, and I needed to get it good. If I would have jumped on drugs, I probably would have aged my body so much by now by forcing my muscles to grow without ever learning about nutrition or anything else. I'd probably be broken down and have all these injuries by now, and I'd
Exactly,
probably
yeah.
be already.
Yeah. Well, one thing, well, because you have all this increased recovery, that tells me that your hormonal system, well, your endocrine system is working better, and you
Yep.
probably have the test levels of a 20-year-old or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't buy for a second that, once you're past 30, it's all downhill. Because I'm looking at a society where I talk to 20-year-olds that have erectile
Yeah,
dysfunction, and they
exactly.
have
Yeah.
they got like no testosterone, when they go get tested. And it's like, guys, we're in a world where there's endocrine contaminants. By the time most guys are 30, that's added up in their body so much that it's just in the way. It's not like your body doesn't know how to make testosterone anymore. And when you look at the data from like 100 years ago, my God, it's hard to even believe the test levels that were normal
Exactly.
back then.
Exactly.
It's like everybody was on gear naturally 100 years ago. So
Yeah.
what have we done to ourselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
We're,
So you know what? I'm curious. Then, do you think that all these guys are getting on TRT, that it's a mistake? Say in their 30s, they're getting like already injecting.
yeah, I think that a lot of them, they don't have the knowledge to know that there's a better, that they could repair their own output. They could repair their own glands. They just don't know that. So I tell them patiently, look, I have zero judgment. I'm not trying to panic you. I don't think it's a death sentence that you're on TRT or anything. But just so you know, it is possible to restore your own functions. And in the long run, obviously, if you stay on TRT, your body may forget how to make what little testosterone it was anyway.
Exactly.
And then I also tell people, maybe a lot of people probably don't think about this factor. When you're taking an external hormone, it's man-made. It's not a living thing. Like the testosterone molecules your body actually makes, those are a living thing. It's different.
Mm.
So you're taking a synthetic version of something that, when your body makes it, it's alive. And I honestly believe that, ounce for ounce or however you could measure it, your body's living testosterone is going to have a lot of, I think it's going to work a little bit better anabolically, but more importantly, it's going to support health in the rest of your body. Whereas synthetic stuff doesn't really know how to communicate with the rest of your body. So there's
Okay.
going to be some kind of cause and effect consequences in there, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm curious then, do you think that you will ever be on TRT? Or do you think that with your knowledge on nutrition and all that, it just will not be a requirement because you're always going to be in
I,
a healthy range?
yeah, I don't think I'll need it. My dad, who's in his 60s, he's not into all this health stuff like me. Like he listens and he
Okay.
tries some of the things I tell him. But he's lived a life where he's always lived in the country. He's always been doing his own thing. He doesn't go to doctors. He's not on any meds.
Right.
And he gets random boners just like a 20-year-old. Like he still has that going on
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
60-year-old. And he's full of energy. He's full of passion. You can't even coop him up in the house for half a day. He's got to be out doing stuff.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I just look at that and I go, well, because he's been away from most of the contaminants and he's just been doing his own thing, his body's still working well that way. He's still got his male hormones and he feels totally motivated and he's very active. He's more active than most, 20, 30-year-olds I
Yeah.
know.
So Could it be then that that's actually the natural state of a male? Like you're supposed to have that. Like you're not supposed to be all run down and destroyed. It's just that the things that we consume and the lifestyles that we lead, it just causes breakdown of the body.
I absolutely, Alex, I absolutely believe that. And I've read studies on even like primitive tribal cultures that someone's gone and studied, and they said that they don't have this degenerative thing that we have in society. Basically, you got 3 or 4 generations of guys that all hunt and do all the same things together, and sometimes you can't even tell who's which generation. And when their life's over, they just don't get up one day. But they never go through the debilitating of having an old, crippled, decrepit
Yeah.
body. They're active just like the young guys until the day they leave the earth. I really think that's more our natural state. I do. I think it's the incredible amount of contaminants and negative self-limiting beliefs that we're just holding ourselves down and we don't know it, in society. There's a lot of great things about society, but there's also a lot of things that come with it that, like all the toxins and so forth, that just have been overlooked, and people aren't realizing the effect that's having on us.
Absolutely.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, it's affecting people on every level. So super significant. And like you said, I honestly believe our natural state is to be fully functional your
Yeah.
whole life.
And free of disease as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. I know that in this part of the world, people think that everybody dies from some disease eventually, but in tribal societies, it's not like that. They're not sick. They're just old. They've had enough life, and they just pass away in their sleep one night. And they were totally functional until the day that happened. So, and I'm not saying that all tribal life is perfect and optimal. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
there's been enough studies I've read that showed that pattern.
Yeah, yeah. You're just taking like bits and parts and yeah, using that to draw conclusions of what's going on right now, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and let's talk about life extension. If you want to get into that topic, are there any like really important tips that you recommend? Like some people say you should walk on a consistent basis. Obviously, there's nutrition to factor in. You can even plug in your Nether Better upgrade manual if you want. So
Sure, sure. The Nether Better Upgrade Manual is, just for people that don't know, for me to summarize what it is, it's all my personal methods of vitality hacks, how to make your mind, body, spirit all work better together so you can achieve and do things and feel so much better than you ever knew was possible. This is why my recovery is twice now what it was when I was, 2 decades younger, and setting PRs all the time. My tendons used to hold me back. They'd be sore. I can handle anything now. It's crazy. So it's definitely adding life to my years, and no doubt coming with that is adding years to my life. But as far as that subject, just to kind of break into that whole subject, my understanding of it, there's kind of like at least 4 legs to the table physically when it comes to extending your life, and that would be, to break it down into one word, it would be circulation, relaxation, assimilation, and elimination. So circulation, we're covering with healthy exercise. And like you say, people that maybe don't want to take it to the extreme we do, just going for a walk each day is plenty, just to get some circulation, or a rebounder. I like to recommend that because anybody can do it. It's real healthy. Then you got relaxation, and this is one where, a lot of us could use improvement because society is very nervous, and there's a lot of things you're being told to be stressed about all the time, and people aren't sleeping well. They even feel guilty when they just like sit down to relax, like it's a crime or
yeah,
something. But we need that. We need a certain amount of good rest, and then assimilation. Of course, if you can't get the good nutrients in, they can't do you any good. And to me, that's really tied with elimination. And I think elimination is the leg of this table that our modern society is probably missing the boat the worst on, because there's so many more man-made toxins now that people don't know how to compensate for. So that's a big one. And then there's the fifth factor that's kind of separate from all this, in the sense that what we believe, what you expect every day of your life, like when you're born into a world where from the time you're a little kid, people say, oh, humans live 70 or 80 years and you just fall apart and die.
hmm
Well, that means that as soon as you accept that thought, your cells are listening, and even if you're not regurgitating it consciously every day, that thought is existing in your subconscious
yeah,
every day, and it's
sure,
programmed your body to go along with it. So there's been enough fringe science now to kind of prove through various methods that our consciousness can do things that people don't even begin to believe. So I'm fully convinced that we as a species have kind of created expectations that our physiology follows those expectations, because the power of what we're all thinking has so much more effect on physical reality than we realize.
Right.
A lot of people have just kind of picked up the idea that all this stuff just happens and there's nothing you can do about it. It's all just external forces. And they don't realize we're the ones creating
Yeah.
this. At some level, we're creating this reality.
Yeah. It's like you're the creator of your own destiny, pretty much. And like you're always saying, it's a cause and effect universe.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And that applies to thoughts too, not just
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
actions.
So
What we think has an effect.
for sure. And like I personally I believe in the law of attraction. I strongly believe in it, even down to like the littlest detail. You know, because I've seen it happen in my life multiple times, and even when I look back at my upbringing, if you will, and the things that I went through, it kind of shaped who I am today in a very specific way. You know, and like for example, I used to watch a lot of shows, and I would see these muscle characters, and at a young age, I wanted to be jacked. And I had this image in my mind, and it ended up happening at some point. I got exactly what I wanted. And I think it was
Yeah.
the same for you. You used to watch, I think Conan the Barbarian or whatever, and
Yep.
you ended up having like that similar frame to Arnold, if you will. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it's subconscious programming in a sense, to a
It
certain
has.
extent.
It really is, man, and it's so cool when you look back in retrospect and you all of a sudden you realize how you created that. It's like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't even know I was doing that, but by visualizing that shape so long for all those years, somehow, for all my efforts in the gym, my body's literally taking on the shape that I was visualizing.
yeah, yeah.
That is so incredible.
It's
And
so
this,
cool. It really is.
yeah, and it applies to everything. This is the kind of thing that humanity needs to know about life in general. You know, we're creating it. So when shit happens that you don't like, it's easy to point fingers and blame other people, but then you don't ever benefit. You gotta look back and backtrack and go, what? How did I attract this situation? Because if I can figure out how I did that, then I can kind of like reverse engineer and change the way I'm using the law of attraction going forward to use it to my benefit instead of using it blindly and wondering why
Exactly.
these things keep happening in my life.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it could work to your benefit or to your detriment.
Yeah,
Because also when you look at people who, like, how bad people, like a lot of just bad shit keeps happening to them all the time. I think there's a
yeah,
reason for this. I don't consider it to be a coincidence. Like I'll say it for me, and knock on wood, but I seem to be a pretty lucky guy. I just don't know why. I mean, maybe it's because of this, but good things generally tend to happen to me.
yeah,
Whereas I've seen some friends who were very negative growing up, and their life just gets worse and worse every year. And I
yeah.
and I think there's something to it, that goes beyond our current understanding. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's difficult to share that with people when they're going through the hard times. Like it's easy when they're going through a good time to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, you see how you created this? Isn't that
Yeah.
cool?"
Yeah.
But when they're like, "Oh, my life's shit. You don't understand, and I
Mm.
was born with all these afflictions, and blah 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 blah."
Mm-hmm.
And if a person won't own their own responsibility, then they can't own their own power, so they
Yeah.
can't change anything. But when they're in that defensive mode because they're hurting, that's like the hardest thing for them to hear. So
Exactly.
it's a real tough message to figure out how to deliver that to people that really need it, to realize, hey, you got the power, man. This is actually a positive message. It's like, yeah, you've created this mess and you have to own that, but then you get to realize your power. You can create something different knowing that.
Yeah. It's like knowing that you effed up. It that's the power right there. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
because it was you who did it. You did it
sure.
over time. You
And
manifested that reality. Like
absolutely. That's so empowering.
yeah,
It's like now you can use that all to your benefit. But the
exactly.
human the
Yeah,
human ego is like, no, I didn't mess up. I don't want to admit I messed up. Well, then you don't get the benefits of learning from your own mess up. You got to own it and go, okay, I see how this works, and now I know how I'm going to change my ways going forward because I understand this better. You just got to own it. People got to own their own creations, and all of a sudden, a lot of things in their life are going to start making a lot more sense, and they're going to feel a lot more empowered when they realize one's doing it. It's not somebody else doing it to you.
yeah, yeah. When you take charge of your yeah, for sure. So what about like positive and negative behavior? Like I know that at some times, like you've done, you need to defend yourself, and obviously you can't just be a pussy. Like you gotta be you gotta have balls, in other words, right? But
Hmm.
like, what are your thoughts on like should like I've heard some people say that men who are positive that it's somehow not good for you, and that you have to like negative people are more real or more logical or whatever. Like, how should people conduct themselves in a more positive way?
Yeah, this is good. This is good because these words they get it translated and they mean different things in different people's
Yeah,
minds. Like that argument about, oh, you don't want to be around all these nice guys all the time because they're not in touch with reality. I do understand that side of it. I like to use the term airy fairy, even though some people would say I'm kind of airy fairy. But I also have that other fiery side that's very
yeah,
grounded, like practical, and this is how you get shit done. And I find a nice balance there. I find that the guys that hang out on the end of the spectrum where, oh, everything's nice and everything's gentle and I'll never fight back and I'll never even raise my voice because that's bad or evil or whatever.
yeah,
Well, that's nice in an idealistic kind of a sense, but here in the physical reality, the truth is if you're not willing to ever be aggressive, look at every civilization that was being like very harmonious and they were enjoying their life on Earth and they were living in peace. But
yeah,
then what happens? Here comes the conquest guys, and they just take
yeah.
everything from you because you
That's how
can't.
we survive. It's always how
Yeah,
it's been on this planet, you know. Like,
yeah. So I would say that my vision of this is a person needs to embody all those things and figure out how to use which energy is right for the situation instead of making a belief system and saying, okay, I divide the line right here, and if you're this aggressive, you're evil, and everything on this side of the line's good.
yeah,
I don't do that anymore. It's like, aggression is like fire. It has its place. It saves lives. It builds civilizations,
hmm,
but it also hurts you real bad if you misuse it. So we're all here challenging ourselves with how to use these different energies in what way we consider best. And you know, like with those rants, I'm not going to take them back because I'll stand on what I say. But at the same time, there's times where I look at it and go, "Yeah, that was overkill.
yeah,
That was a
yeah,
little overly emotional. I didn't need to go quite that far." But at the same time, that's just being real. It's like I'm a
sure,
human. I have emotions. I'm
yeah,
not going to try to lie to you guys and hide all my emotions. I might as well show them sometimes
right,
because that's just part of being human. You know,
yeah,
it doesn't do us any good to deny our emotions. You end up with weird crimes being committed because people have been suppressing shit for too long.
hmm,
So it's like, hey, man, express yourself, especially on the internet. I believe in freedom of speech, even if I don't like the things people
yeah,
say. So what? I
yeah,
believe in freedom of speech, and
definitely,
and I should be able to say whatever I want. And if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to it. But I believe it's really healthy for people to express what they're feeling, and society does not make that all that easy. So when you can find outlets to at least express yourself, then you get to have that emotional exchange that you need, and it doesn't just stay inside you, building up in your subconscious somewhere to where one day you're so pinned up that you do some crazy thing and you're not even sure why you did it. It's better to just express those emotions, floppy as they may be, and if you have to apologize and take some of it back, fine. I I'm not above doing that on camera and saying, look, guys, that was, I don't know what crawled up my butt
yeah,
that day. That was way too emotional. I was way overkill. I was out of line. I take it back because I think that's a good example to show people that it's okay to apologize. It's
right,
okay to just be like, oh, yeah, I made a mistake, guys. I screwed that up.
yeah,
And I'm going to take it back and go a different way. And I'm just going to move forward constructively.
hmm,
Because it seems like a lot of people can't do that. They feel like it's the end of the world if they have to admit they made a mistake, and so they can't do it. And you become stuck. You can't progress on your own path if you can't even acknowledge that this was probably not my best step right here. How are you going to correct it if you're not even willing to own it?
mm,
So so sometimes I feel like being sloppy emotionally on camera gives me a chance to kind of do that and say, guys, I think I need to take some of that back, and just acknowledge that I get emotional. Here's the parts I stand on. Here's the parts that was overkill. I didn't need to drop 30 F bombs at somebody. That was, could have been better. But I just feel like expression's healthy, and society's been really afraid of expressing emotions because most people won't tolerate it. If you express your emotions, they start freaking out, and everybody starts freaking out. But it's just not healthy for us. It leads to too many pinned up things that even lead to illness.
hmm,
So I
okay,
think I think the more people can get comfortable stating their point and the other party needs to realize it's not the end of the world that this person firmly disagrees with me passionately. That's fine, that we're supposed to be able to do that in society, like have a strong stance that's different than somebody else's without it being like, oh, you're evil and I hate you now. I
Yeah.
don't hate anybody that I rant at. I love everybody. But if I think what you said's really stupid, I'm just saying that, I'm
Okay.
just sharing my honest opinion, that's all it is.
Well, I think that was a great answer. You covered a lot of details there. It's very truthful and it's very real. You know. But some things you said, I'm just a bit curious, right? Two things in particular. For one, you say you love everybody. Like, what do you mean by that, and why would you love everybody, especially when there's people doing very bad things in this world? Or, for
Right.
example, you've heard love your enemies, right? You've heard that one, but then others would say forget about love your enemies. You want to hate your enemies. So, what's your stance on that?
My stance is I separate. When I say I love everybody, I mean I believe that all people are doing what they think is best from their perspective. I don't love what all people do, not at all.
Right.
And there are people doing things that if I was there, I would stop them by any means necessary, even if I had to end their life, because I would believe so strongly that needs to be stopped. Yet at the same time, at a certain level, I still love them as a consciousness. I honor that, they're part of this universe. They have just as much right to be here as me. I think they've gone way, way crazy and astray on their path, and I will take action against somebody, but I don't actually hate them because the feeling of hatred just destroys me. It
Okay.
destroys you. I don't want to hate anybody. I can fight against something, I can fight for a cause, but in my own heart, I just want my own heart to be open, and because I just believe that's so much healthier. And I know that down deep, somewhere inside that person, they didn't mean to be this tragic mess that's hurting other people. It's just whatever happened in their life that got them so confused and off track. So I guess what I'm saying is I love the person like at the level of their soul. I may not be able to tolerate the person, the way they're being and the way they're living their life on the earth. But I just want to stay open-hearted and live more from that feeling of love. And when I say love, I don't mean like ooey gooey, like soft, over emotional. I just
Yeah.
mean a passion and appreciation for life itself and everything that's a part of it. I accept it as a meaningful part of the universe and a valuable. Even if I had to fight to the death against somebody, I still accept that they're part of this whole, and they have just as much right to be as me. And I guess that's it. I don't,
Okay. No, that's good. It's a good answer, and I appreciate you clarifying that. So, like, I can expand a bit further on this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts on turn the other cheek? Should one
Oh,
engage in that, or should they fight back with all their might?
I totally think that that's a context thing. I think
Okay.
because I've done it both ways, and there's been situations where I felt like I made the right decision for sure by turning the other cheek. And then there's other situations where I totally regretted that I turned the other cheek when I look back at it.
Right.
It's like that was wrong. I should have made my stand. I should have been true to my heart. I should have defended myself or whoever it was. And because now that person who I didn't stand up to, who I just turned the other cheek, thinking that that was some magic thing, they didn't learn anything. They're out there bullying people or being a dick, and I had a chance to, put them in check. And maybe I was meant to. Maybe I should have. So I look at any verse out of any, scripture or holy book or anything that people consider wise, and I just say, hey guys, we got to use our reason too. We got to realize there's a context for any verse that was ever written anywhere. It's not just some blind thing that necessarily automatically just applies to everything. Because in testing it, I found that that's just not true.
Right.
There's definitely situations where you need to defend yourself or your loved ones. Because if you don't, I mean, it's like since I had kids, I look at my kids and I realized, I've been willing to put up with abuse from certain people that I would not allow to happen to my kids.
Hmm.
And so this protective part came alive inside me and was like, what if I had a belief system that was completely nonviolent no matter what, and somebody broke into this house to just do whatever they want to my family? Am I seriously gonna, just go sit on a sofa and let that happen? That's
Yeah.
insane. My children are dependent on me for their life more than anybody else. So I feel it's important to sort these things out with yourself so you know where you really stand, so that you don't get into a situation and then freeze because you haven't thought it through yet where you really stand on that.
Right.
I know where I stand. There's certain, if you threaten somebody I care about, I'm going to defend them by any means necessary. It doesn't mean I need to hate that person, but I will do whatever I have to stop them, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like it's not so black and white as some people make it out to be. It really is a context specific thing, and you have to calibrate to the situation for the most part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think some people want to be told very simple rules to live life by because they think that'll work. Like if you just give me 10 basic guidelines, everything's going to be just right.
Yeah.
But it's just not, because life is this much more interesting thing than that. There's many more shades of gray. There's many more unique circumstances, and I really believe that's one of the big things life is about. Is what do you choose to do when you're in a dynamic situation where you got these choices? Maybe none of them look ideal, but it's still on you to decide. This thing has fallen in your lap. I think that's one of the big things about life right there, is be true to yourself, because at the end, when you're reviewing your life, you're going to be answering to that part of you that has been with you all along. And if you'll be true to it, I think it's going to be a lot easier and better to reflect on your life than if you go back and go, man, I defiled my own truth at all those different intersections, all those important points at life. Because I used to do that. I used to hold things in more than I should,
Right.
and it did a lot of harm and damage. And I found now that, it's just better to be more real. Be more real to what's really in your heart. You may have to change your opinion later. You may have to change your mind, but you got to be real with where you're at right now. That's your personal path of progress. Because if you can't do that, then you don't even know. You can't even find any of your own paths in life. You're basically living somebody else's reality
Yes.
until you learn to be true to what's inside.
Yeah. So how does one like not deny this truth and get more in touch with your higher self, quote unquote? Like what would you advise for someone who's really struggling with this? Like they're just living someone else's reality in a sense.
Yeah, I think when a person starts to realize that, when they start to realize that their life's feeling empty, it feels like just a bunch of rituals and stuff they don't even understand why they're doing, and they're not finding any passion or joy, and they know now, I'm seeking something, and this is not it. Um, any form of meditation, and meditation just meaning getting in a relaxed state where your mind's not chattering,
Okay.
and then it gets easier to get to know your real self better,
Mm-hmm.
to and then that's one part of it, is getting to know who you are inside. What are your real passions? Who did you come into this world as a child, before anybody started discouraging you and telling you that was all crazy and it's not going to work? And if you can find that again, it's like you'll feel that sense of wonderment in your heart again, like anything's possible. And then you have to honor that, which is hard to do in a world where the governments and the religions and the patterns that have been passed on socially teach people, oh, you're just one person, you can't change anything, your opinion doesn't mean anything. It's really hard to realize that if you'll honor your own inner truth inside, tremendous things can happen in this world that can change the whole world, even from one person.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why I tell people, is like, guys, you have no idea your potential. Any one of you might change this whole world. So when you have beliefs that don't even allow for that, like your reality's already been framed into this tiny little thing where, you just got to work your 9 to 5 and pay your taxes and shut up and live your life and get out of the way. That's not true, and that's why it's unfulfilling. Because I believe everybody has inside them a bigger, grander vision of who they can be, and if they will honor that, because if you go around looking for somebody else to honor it, you never find that. You're never going to find somebody else to tell you that, oh yeah, your vision's right for you. I mean, you might get lucky and have somebody tell you that, but most people who ever did anything exceptional, they had plenty of naysayers around them that just didn't get their vision, because it wasn't their vision. So of course they can't see it. That's why we have to honor it ourselves. You're the only one that can actually see your authentic vision. Somebody else might appreciate it at some point when they start to get it, but only you can honor it enough to bring it into reality. That's the power of being a creator. To me, that's what it means to be made in the image of the Creator. It's not that there's some guy with a beard somewhere who runs everything. It's that we're creative beings. That's our nature, And when we're being authentic to our own heart, I believe everybody has something creative and unique about them. And I would love for them to be in touch with that, because this whole world would just be like utopian if people were living from their own special truth, you know. But instead, we're handed a lot of false paths, and people are trying to find fulfillment doing these things they're told are going to bring fulfillment,
Hmm.
and they're just not finding it, you know, because that's not real fulfillment. Your real fulfillment's only something that can come from inside of you.
Hmm. Well, that was very profound, my friend. I'll probably re-listen to that a few times when this is over. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. You ask good questions, Alex. This is fun.
Well, I'm enjoying myself, man. I think we're elaborating on some interesting topics, and it's gonna help people too. Give us
Absolutely.
information, you know.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we covered a lot about the whole lifestyle, personal development thing for now. So let's bring the discussion back to strength training, building muscle, topics like that,
Hmm.
right? Because that was a nice little. I like that speech. It's very good. It's very good. So we'll leave it at that for now, okay?
Okay.
Okay. We didn't talk about the legs yet, right?
Yes. I've
Now,
been looking for this.
yes, yes. Now, obviously, we're told that you have to do a bunch of squats if you want to get big legs, right? But
Yeah.
now you're showing that there's other ways to do it. Now,
Right.
personally, I
Right.
think the squat is fantastic. I love everything about it, and my
Yeah.
favorite variation is the front squat. Okay, I like front squats, Zercher squats. I just think they're you can't go wrong with squats. I just like them a lot.
Yeah.
But it's
Actually,
not the only way to build your legs, you know?
right. Right. You know, I tell people out of the big three or whatever, I like the squat the most, and I do think it's a pretty good move. I only excluded it just because
Just to fuck with
it's
people.
just to make a point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, I told everybody, look, I'm still allowed to do the variations. I'm just giving up the most standard, like
Yeah,
regular
exactly.
bench, regular deadlift, regular back squat, because I can totally do everything I need and work around those and just show people, hey, there's nothing wrong with those, but just so you know, you definitely can achieve all the same things. You can even take it further, and you don't have to use those.
For
And
sure.
it's one thing to say it because some people kind of believe you, but I just feel like if I go ahead and show it, that will actually give some people the confidence to do what they already want to do, which is to branch off more into their own creative idea of training. I want them to have that confidence, you know, and because I think it's going to be really rewarding for them. They're going to make some cool discoveries.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, when it comes to legs, you know, even I'm. It's not like I'm pioneering this. There's been bodybuilders that didn't want a big waist, so they didn't do squats. They
Yeah,
just
people
did
have done
like,
this for a long time, obviously. Yeah.
yeah. And to me, a leg press is basically it's less athletic, obviously, because you're not
Yeah.
balancing. But as far as just building mass, yeah, it works almost the same. It's just that a squat is kind of one of those bang for your buck exercises where you're
Yeah.
trying to get a lot of full body mass. Leg press is just legs, but as far as a big mass builder, it works okay. But that being said, I wouldn't even need a leg press to build my legs up. If you know, I like it, I kind of rig myself up one. But you can do, you know, split squats. You can do weighted lunges uphill and downhill. You can do, you know, even a trap bar builds quads really
Yeah.
well. There's just, I mean, your options are just, once you know what it feels like, mind muscle, to be fully activating those muscles, you can easily find a way to do that in another exercise.
Hmm.
And I think this is one of the reasons why younger lifters, they're kind of stepping out on faith when they try any of these things that I'm showing them, because they don't feel that for themselves yet. They can't feel,
Right.
oh my God, that's so much quad tension. That's building
Yeah.
quads. I can tell, you know. So they're kind of going through the motions, almost watching themselves from the outside to watch their own form
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
instead of really feeling it from the inside.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's also why it really is an individual thing, and you have to find out what works best for your build. Like we were talking about before with Jefferson's, the position is different, the rack height is different. Like for me, 3, 4 inches above the ground is perfection, you know. And actually, I don't even like doing that lift off the floor. I much prefer doing it slightly elevated, you know. And same thing for
Yeah,
the trap bar, high handles. It's really about just feeling it, you know, and getting in tune with the lift. And if it's like working for you, then obviously it's good, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's one of those things that makes me a little bit sad when I see somebody says, "Oh, I was doing that for a while and it was working really well, but then all the gym bros told me it was a bad idea, so I just went
Yeah.
back to this." And it's like, man, you got to believe in your own experience. That's how you get further. If it's working, do it, man.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
might not, it might not even work for the next person, but if you discover something that's working for you, get those gains, you know?
Yeah. So in regards to squats, I saw you do the machine squat, right? And
Mm,
that's a variation. But are you gonna be doing more of those, or that you just did that for like just to test it out or whatever?
I kind of, I don't have any plans to do any more soon, but I am sure I'll get back around to doing that. It's kind of fun. It, the way those hooks work,
Yeah, it's like
it,
weird. It's like it's like heavier at the top, lighter at the bottom type of deal.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And it totally, as far as how heavy it gets, it totally depends how far I'm leaning into it. I've tried to go almost under it, but the problem is the hooks will unhook and drop the bar
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
So I have to push at an angle here, which means that I'm actually pulling against those hooks. And I can feel that at the bottom it's lighter because part of the load's hanging on the hooks. So I get it moving. But as I come up to the middle here, I'm pushing so hard against those hooks, it gets really heavy in the middle, and it actually gets lighter as I come past that point, and now it's almost upright, and I'm not pulling as hard against
Yeah.
those hooks because I'm not lean like this. So it's really weird, but it's building muscle because anytime you shock your muscles with a totally different strength curve like that, I
Yeah.
can like feel my legs growing from it. It's weird.
It's honestly a very weird strength curve. Like I can't imagine doing that on a regular movement.
Yeah.
Like even a regular bench, it's gonna be heavier at the bottom, lighter at the top. When you add bands, it's the opposite. But with you, it's like
Yep.
it's a three part. You know, it's like light, heavy, light. It's like whoa. You know?
Yeah. It seems like there was some, and you might know better than me. It seems like there was some kind of machines in commercial gyms about 10 years ago when I was still going to them. Somebody had designed something that was supposed to be adjustable where you could make like the bottom or the middle or the top part of the range of the motion the heaviest part by like putting this pin in a different
Okay.
pulley or something. I don't remember which company made that, but I remember seeing that idea in a gym. I didn't even use it. I was just lifting weights and stuff.
Well,
But
that's an interesting idea.
yeah,
The only method I know of doing that is by attaching a band to a machine. You know,
yeah,
which
yeah,
like people don't know, but you can actually do it. Like you can add bands to your leg press on a hammer strength machine, anything, and it changes the strength curve that much more. You know.
yeah,
But in terms of
yeah.
what you're describing, I've never heard of that. That sounds
Yeah.
very interesting, though. Yeah.
It is. It is. It's a weird. I didn't plan for it, but one day I was looking at that thing going, this would work. I could hang these hooks here
Yeah,
and
yeah.
do like a swinging lift, and started doing it and felt that weird strength curve, and I just said, you know what? This is good. It's
Yeah,
going to
why
get me some
not? Yeah.
gains.
And like
Shock.
you're doing it with the Zerchers too, right? But with the Zerchers,
Yeah.
it's not the same thing though, because of the
No.
way like you don't have to push hard against it, right? Like in that
Right.
awkward
Right.
little angle there.
Exactly. They're more comfortable because the fact that they're hanging on hooks actually allows me to get my feet a little bit forward more than I normally would, so I can lean back under that Zercher harder
Yeah.
and get more underneath it rather than being forward like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually takes some of the load off my back and just
Okay.
allows me to kind of use my legs and
Yeah.
overload my biceps and traps.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I do them different. I do them more back based from a lower position, but what I've shown on film so far is just me, putting it in that sweet spot range of motion and just overloading the biceps as hard as I can. And it does, even in that shorter range, I'm getting quad gains even from doing that.
Yes.
So,
So you're doing the Zerchers primarily for the bicep tendon? Is it like, are you
well,
trying to strengthen your body specifically, or you're just doing it because you enjoy it and it's
uh,
just
you
one little
know,
thing right now?
I wanted to try it on the machine because I knew it would feel different. And when I did, I realized, oh my God, I can put like 1,000 pounds and even move it down my arm a little, like out this way,
Yeah.
and get more leverage. And it's kind of a negative as I'm standing up when I'm doing it right. It's kind of
Yeah,
stretching
it
my arm.
opens up. Yeah.
But they got so sore, and I was like, whoa! It feels like I did the best heavy barbell workout I ever did on my biceps.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I almost never do barbell curls. I just hate them. For some reason, they don't activate my biceps all that well.
Okay.
But that big Zercher negative, it activates the hell out of them. So I love it because you get a lot of things. You get legs, you get core and back, and it's like the best biceps overload I've come across.
Okay. So like if rack pulls overload the traps, would you say this might be one of the ultimate overloaders for biceps? The way you're
I
doing
think
it
so.
specifically?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think just like what you discovered with traps, the way to get the most weight possible on a muscle and stretch overload it, I feel like that's what this is doing for the biceps, you
Okay.
know.
Very interesting.
So I would advise people, I know not everybody has my setup, but I think you could try this even on a normal Smith machine because that way you can lean into it and you can focus on your biceps. I think when you lift at free weights, you don't get to focus on your biceps as much. You have to coordinate your whole body more. But there's just this is why I tell people, yes, free weights are superior for athletes, but there's really cool things you can do on machines you can't do with free weights.
Hmm.
Like the way you can put your on a Smith press, you can put your legs out in front of you or behind you doing a
Yeah.
squat or something. It just allows you to dig into the muscles in a way you can't do free weights. And sometimes you find a real sweet spot like that just to get some extra gains on a certain muscle.
Okay.
And to me, that's what machines are for, just putting on the mass and strength.
Yeah. But if you were more so trying to target like your upper back, you would just do it straight off pins. I'm assuming
Yeah,
without the hooks.
yeah. I feel like it forces you to be more forward and it
Okay.
puts a lot more pull on your back when you're doing it free weights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, it makes sense when you look at the movement. The other one, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. But are you ever going to be doing those just straight off pins, or you're really having fun with the machine? Because that's been your thing so far. You've been doing the machine push-ups, the squats, all these variations.
Yeah. I'll definitely be doing more free weight stuff too. I'm just and I do more than people realize. It's just I tend to show the
Yeah, you're just
heaviest thing I
showing
did
little
that day.
snippets. I get it. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. Because it gets attention when you show a lift that heavy. Even if somebody's going to criticize it because they didn't see the rest of the workout,
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, that they're going to click on it. It's like 1,200 pound partial whatever. They're going to click on that. So but I've been thinking about it lately. I need to go ahead and film. I need to add to my workouts playlist and film some more of my full workouts so people get
Like,
an idea.
yo, those were good. The Nether by the Day when you first started that. Yeah, that was good. But you got to be careful with copyright music. You got to be very
Yeah.
careful with
Oh,
that.
man. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
And
that could
that's
that could ruin you. Like seriously, do not put copyrighted music. If you're gonna lift, I know you want to lift to that music, but just put something over it. You know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not worth the risk. And it was weird because that's probably one of the main reasons I haven't re-uploaded all those workouts
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Exactly.
and also I'm not in that training stage. At that time, I had time to be doing like 2 hour workouts every day. So I thought this is a good time to film like a high volume phase in my training. And right now I'm not. I'm doing more multiple shorter workouts during the day that usually involve going real heavy on something, and it's just totally different.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, the music was fun, but it's not safe.
No,
So
it's not safe at all. Yeah. Actually, there is a way to get around it. The clip has to be like 30 seconds, and
okay.
even at that, it's still risky because like for example, some of my PRs, like if you saw the 1,000 Jefferson, Winter Sun actually copyrighted that video, so they
Oh,
get money off it, right? So I don't make any money from the video, but they do, which is fine by me. But I got lucky because it's a short clip. Now, if it was
right.
a whole song, let's say it was like 5 sets of rack pulls, and you hear that one song the whole time, then you end up having problems. So the
Okay.
exception is if you hear stuff in the background, right? So obviously it's not intentional to include that music, and
Okay.
it's a short clip. That's when they get you off, you know?
Interesting. So winters. Oh, so basically, if my channel gets big enough that somebody actually likes the video that goes with the music, they might actually copyright it. That's
They'll
cool. I didn't
copyright it
know.
and they will receive the income off it, not you, which is totally
Interesting.
fine. You know, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that could happen. That's what happened to me a few times, and I'm lucky, you know, because if I was a smaller channel, maybe I can get shut down for that.
Yeah.
From
Well,
what?
they send. I've had plenty of warnings, and it just says like, you're not in any trouble, but you're gonna have to either record over that or take the
Yeah,
video down.
yeah,
You
that's
know.
right.
And it's like, oh, okay. And I end up using like Mozart or something funny to cover over it.
But you know what's cool? Even though you're using that music, it still fits, right?
Yeah.
It fits. Like even when you did that Zercher lift, right, and you did the dance at the beginning, you
I
synced it with that song, man.
did.
It was awesome, you know?
Isn't that crazy? I know. I get lucky. It's like I'll film something to my own music, and then I'll go, okay. I got to find a song to put over
Yeah.
this, and I try 3 or 4 things, and all of a sudden one of them's lining up on the timing.
Yeah, it always
Like,
works. Always, yeah. It's so cool.
it is. It looks like I did it on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
Well, yeah, that's just anyway. That's just one thing.
yeah.
So for the training, yeah, going back to that, we're
Yeah.
talking about squats and exercises of that nature. Do you think someone could build really big legs by just doing like say transcendent training on pistol squats?
Yes, I do. I do. I think would they be the ultimate biggest? No, because I think to have the very biggest possible, you're going to have maximum heavyweight somewhere in your training rotation. But I think that a person that could do like 100 good pistol squats, you're going to have some pretty amazing legs. They're going to be better than a lot of guys who do squats. I really believe that.
Right.
Granted, I'm talking good form and full contraction, not just like bouncing through them, but really, if you could dig in and grind out like 100 good pistol squats, you got to have some pretty
Well,
amazing.
I think it would be a world record. You know,
Would it?
the most I've seen is like 30 or 50, something like that.
Yeah.
It would be hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They're so challenging. They're so humbling. You know, I think that's the reason people don't build big legs with things like that is because it doesn't look as cool and it's actually harder than it looks. So it's like you're working extra hard and nobody's that impressed because you're
Yeah.
just lifting your body and they don't realize how intense that is. But if you throw five, six, whatever plates on and you're repping that, everybody goes, "Oh, look at him. He's got strong legs." You know, it
Exactly.
just
Yeah,
looks.
and people don't understand leverages either. They don't
Yeah,
realize that it's all about moment arms and like I can grab this bottle for example. If I grab it by the edge like this, it's gonna be a lot different from grabbing it here. You know, in
yeah,
terms of the way that it affects the muscle.
absolutely. Like people with long limbs, obviously they have worse leverage. So
Yeah, so they
that
kind of get
means,
more gains with less technically. You know, if you think of it
yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people with the best calves, for example, just from walking around, I think they actually have. I'm not going to say bad, but I think that's actually not really good calf genetics because ideally, the stronger your calves are and the lighter they are, that means you're faster. So the
Oh,
person that just gets huge calves just from walking around, as far as I'm concerned, they probably have like really bad leverage in their calves. That's why they built so much muscle just from doing
oh,
almost nothing.
that's possible, eh? Never
Hmm.
thought of it like that. Never thought of it. All I know is that fat people usually have big calves, even when they're
Yes.
fat, because it's so much. It's like they're being overloaded for all their life, you know. And then they cut
Yeah.
down the weight, and they just have these huge calves, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that shows perfectly that for calf training, a person can really just do just a little bit each day
Basic
and over
stuff, yeah.
time. Yeah.
But you know what? I think too, people make excuses when it comes down to calves, saying that it's impossible to build. I don't buy that whatsoever. I think it's complete bullshit. I just feel that they haven't trained it hard enough, and they
Yeah,
haven't given it enough time. You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have good calves, but I absolutely believe what you're saying. And they are growing,
Yeah.
they're starting to pop. They grow. It's just they're 20 years behind everything else,
Yeah.
I actually feel like I'm making pretty good calf gains and they're still skinny, but I think people have again, I think especially with the young guys, they see certain guys blow up at age 20 because they're on all this gear or whatever, and they think it's supposed to be like that. Like, I should be able to have huge calves
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
2 months. And if I don't have huge calves in 2 months, I have crappy genetics. And it's like, no.
Yeah. The genetics card. I don't buy the argument that people have bad calf genetics, just that they're not training them hard enough. And some really good methods I find it includes weighted stretching. I think even Sam or Neil, he added like an inch to his calves or something
Yeah.
with the weighted stretching.
Yeah. In only a month, I was like,
That's
man,
crazy.
he's a natural, he's an ectomorph, and he added an inch. Man, that's
Yeah, that's
phenomenal. That's
hardcore.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I find too like you can do nucleus overload on your calves. You could do one leg at a time. That really hammers them hard. And now
Yeah.
you even have your new calf machine, which is really
Yes.
cool.
And you know what's so cool, Alex? I did one little set just because I did that demo with my left leg. When I turned the camera off, I went ahead and did, one little set with my right, just imagine it. I can feel in my soleus, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sore today just from that, which tells me my upright calf training has not been hitting that at all.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so this is I kind of doubted that there was that big of a difference between, bent knee and straight.
Yeah.
Now I know it's for real. The
Mm.
I can feel it down deep underneath. It's sore, so it's going to be pushing my calves out more now.
Yeah, yeah. But you're only doing that for the soleus. I think that's how it's pronounced. You're only doing for that portion, right? Like when you want to target like the gastrocnemius, whatever it's called, you're just standing up, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and that's given me because that's all I've been doing is standing. I've noticed I have a nice pop now. I got that biceps, but they're
Yeah.
not big. They're little, but they're real striated and nice. So I think working this soleus is going to kind of push all that out,
Okay.
give it more mass.
Yeah, and when you do it standing up, do you put a weight on your back? Because we
Oh,
only
yeah.
saw like the close up.
Yeah, I haven't. I've done it a few times that way, but I actually just determined that when I use the occlusion bands around my calves, it kind of weakens you anyway. And I found that just going body weight and going that one really high
Yeah.
rep set, man, it hurts. They get sore, and so I just thought, yeah, that's enough for now. I may have to go ahead and go heavy and start doing it that way.
Okay.
And I figure I'll do it in stages, like because I've been doing more high rep stuff on calves. Here in a while, I'll shift over and I'll try just going really heavy with lower rep schemes, and I'll see. I'll do that for like a month or two, and I'll just see how my calves respond to that. Because I've heard people in both camps. I know like Arnold would do the donkey calves with like all those people on his back, and supposedly that's what worked for him. But then I've heard a lot of other people say it was only when they went high volume they finally got calf gains.
Yeah.
I'm going to test both extremes and just try to see what's what for my calves, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the best thing you could do, experiment. But
Yeah,
like right now you're doing body weight, one leg at a time. You don't do two legs, just always one.
right. I,
That's
I
fine.
do I do one, and then sometimes after that I'll go ahead and start using both because they're really fatigued and weak, and then
Yeah.
I can sit there and do two with just my body weight and put in some extra sets, you know.
Okay. And you do like multiple sets, high frequency?
Sometimes I do what I showed on that video the other day, where I just do the one set for all I got until they're just shaking and weak and burnt. And other times I'll do more, a little closer to traditional sets. I might do a couple sets of 30 reps, a couple sets of 20, then some 15s,
Yeah.
and then I'll switch to like two legs, and I'll start
Okay.
doing some sets that way. And I might do, maybe 8 sets, something like that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that just came across my mind, okay, is your setup, your unique little setup here. Theoretically, would you be able to, like that same hook setup that you use for the squats, and you stand on like a board and you get really deep range of motion using no hands? Say you grab onto your power rack and then you just do like calf raises from there.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Sure, you could do it. I mean, I could do like a squat with my toes on elevated on something and do them that way, or or even flip upside down, do it leg press style. I
Yeah.
could do it that way. So there's a lot of options. Really, I just because somebody finally convinced me that you need to train with your legs bent also.
Yeah.
That was why I went down there and rigged up that idea yesterday. And man, like I say, they're sore today. I'm totally impressed. So now I know I need to come up with more variations for calves and hit them bent knee and straight leg
Yeah.
and just feel what each exercise does. Kind of like Vince Gironda would say, go, I think it was him, he'd say, if you wonder about an exercise, go do 20 hard sets of it and then feel exactly where you're sore the next day.
Yeah. That's a
And then
great quote.
yeah, and then you just write that in your book. It's like, okay, for inner biceps, this is what works really well, or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You start mapping it all out on your body, how to hit each section.
Right. Well, you know what? I think also for you, you would enjoy the Russian farmer walk, which
What
involves.
is that?
Oh, you would like that. You would like that. You stand on your tippy toes and you do a farmer walk outside.
Oh
If you
my
want to make it
gosh.
more intense, you go on an incline. That's gonna destroy your calves.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I think
Uh,
you'd like it. I think you'd like it. You can do it on a decline too. Why not? You know?
yeah, I am definitely going to do that. I love that idea. It's been a while since I did any farmers walks because I'm like, well, my traps, I got better things for
Yeah,
traps,
yeah,
but that is motivational. Now I'm going to have to do it.
yeah. And I know. You don't have any dumbbells, right? You just
No,
use weight plates.
yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say you wanted to do a dumbbell curl or something. Would you just like wrap a rope around it and then use that as a handle and just?
I've done that, yeah. And also, if as long as the plates aren't going to be too close to my body, I'll just stick like 3 fingers right through the middle of a plate and just
Yeah, yeah.
fill them.
I've seen you do that. That's actually it's a very hard lift though. It's called the plate curl, and the arm wrestlers use it.
Yeah,
Because it's very specific for their sport. Hits the forearms hard too.
yeah, yeah. It's humbling. I remember the first time I did it just with my 25-pound plates, and I was like,
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's something
man,
else.
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
am I a wimp?
But you know what's cool too? Yeah, the fact that it's humbling, it prevents you from ego lifting in a sense, and it
Yeah.
also has amazing carryover to regular curls. Like again, a few weeks ago, I went to a gym and I was doing some curls with the dumbbells, and it was the easiest thing I ever did in my life because I've been doing some really ghetto setups. Okay, I have a loading pin, and I'll attach a carabiner through it with a little handle, and I'll do these weird curls, and the loading pin is like shaking all over the place. and it's like very awkward. Sometimes I'll even hang bands. I'll take a band, shove it between the plates, and I'll curl with that. And it's
Wow.
like it's so difficult that when you go to a gym and you use a nice barbell or a nice dumbbell, it feels way easier, even with your
Nice.
heavier weights, you know?
Well, that's good to know. I haven't done any conventional curls in so long. I need to try it now and feel the difference because
Oh my
it's been
God.
a long
You
time,
would
man.
freak out. If you went to a commercial gym and you did regular curls, you'd be amazed how light they feel with
Nice.
dumbbells. It would be next level easy.
That is a, I heard somewhere that's a tested event now. I mean, I know it's not powerlifting, but
Strict curl,
some,
yeah, it's been
yeah,
for a long time. Yep,
interesting.
you go against the wall. I think it's a 3 point contact, so you got to have your head, upper back, and glutes, I believe. Just
Okay.
with strict curl. Usually it's an easy curl bar, and I think the world record is like 270 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah, man.
but strict, like not an ounce of body English, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah, and then before that, it was actually CT Fletcher who had the record.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had 225, so it's like a 50-pound jump,
Damn.
you know, like so it's hard.
That is, that sounds crazy. I might have to test myself one of these days and just see where I'm at with that.
Yeah,
It's
well, you could do it at your place. You just lean against the wall or your power rack, whatever. I think it'd be perfectly fine, you know.
nice.
Yeah. So the fact that you don't have dumbbells, though, has that hindered your training in any way, or do you feel like you're fine without them?
I was a little bummed. I used to have a big collection of dumbbells, and then back in my like mid 20s, I moved like four different times in a year, and I ended up selling a lot of my stuff because I didn't have place for it.
Yeah.
And I sold my whole dumbbell collection. I had all the way up to 120s. And when I got real serious again about bodybuilding about 5 years ago, where I was like inspired and I was ready to take it all to a new level, I felt kind of bummed that I didn't have my dumbbell collection. I thought it was going to really limit me. But once I got going, I realized, you know what? You can hold a plate and you can do the same things. And even if you're not lifting the same weight, I'm advanced enough. It doesn't matter anymore because I can feel in my muscle when I'm targeting it well enough. It almost doesn't even matter what the weight is. What matters is what I feel. So I can train by feel, and I can do my lateral raises, and I can do um, even a pullover, like a heavy pullover. I'm always able to rig up something that I
Yeah.
can use and hold for that. Granted, they'd be really convenient, but it's just not a big enough deal that I feel like I'm in any hurry. I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah. Plus, I think you've been training so long without them that I mean, you just gotten used to it, and
Yeah.
there's really so many ways. Like if you want to do a hammer curl, you take a rope, shove it between a plate, and there you go. Grab a neutral, you're good to go. So
Yep.
it's honestly very simple, but you could rig up.
Yep.
And it takes
Yeah.
5 seconds too. You don't have to load up all those plates either.
Exactly. And it's good for your mind. It's good to be a little limited on
Yeah,
equipment.
yeah, for sure. I agree with that. The only thing though that I miss personally about like, those really nice dumbbells, first of all, they fit well, so it's nice and smooth, and you could do some cool presses with it. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm sure you miss the dumbbell press, or maybe you don't. I don't know, but I
I
was like
do.
that. You know.
I do. And I miss running the rack like on
Oh yeah, that's fun.
it's
Yeah.
it's really fun, yeah. Brutal but fun. And the other thing I noticed that I miss from commercial gyms is the cable pulleys. Just
Ah, the
have
cables. Yeah.
double cables that are adjustable for height.
Mhm.
There's a lot of cool stuff. But now that I got bands, like you said, and I'm learning how to
Yeah.
use them, I don't really need cables
No, you don't
anymore.
need cables. I mean, you could get one if you want. You can get it will cost you like a bit over 200 or a bit under 200, and it's fully adjustable, plate loaded, and you'd be able
Oh,
to put it on
nice.
top of your power rack at the bottom, whatever. And you can do a lot of stuff with that. But again, with the bands, you don't really need it.
Yeah,
So it's about plus the bands you could just throw them in a bag or something. With a cable
yeah.
machine, it's going to be a bit different in terms of space. You know.
Yeah, it's really I think the cables for most of us with home gyms they're going to be a better option because like you say, you could go camping, you can connect your cables to a tree and do all kinds of exercises. I mean, they weigh nothing. You can shove them in any
Yeah,
bag and
yeah,
try them.
exactly.
It's totally cool. You can do muscle maintenance on any of your muscles once you know how to use them well enough. You can keep your physique even if you're on the road for like a
Yeah,
month,
yeah,
whatever, just with some bands, you
yeah.
know?
Sometimes I'll do that. I'll just go to the park and I'll train my neck like a weirdo. I'll take a
Nice.
harness, I'll shove some bands through it, I'll put it on top of a tree, and I'm here doing neck curls, in the park. And there's people walking by just staring at me, but that
Yeah.
just goes to show like what you could do with them.
Yeah, yeah. I'd imagine you probably get recognized out in public at this point, right?
Yes, yes, it has happened, and there's even been cases of stalking, if you will.
Oh man,
That's
I
been
bet.
weird. That's been
Yeah,
fucking weird. Let me tell you.
yeah, yeah. That's one reason I'm keeping anonymous as long as I reasonably can. It's just so family life can be
No, I understand.
private. And I mean, I want to reach out and communicate with everybody, but man, when strange people start following you around and shut the door, that's
Yeah, it's weird. But what is cool is when you meet your fans in person.
yeah,
That's a great feeling. Like it's really, and it's always been positive. I've had guys. I've been on the bus sometimes, and they'll get off their stop early just so they could talk to me. You know,
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
have a
I bet.
conversation for like 5, 10 minutes or whatever, and it's always been really cool. Always respect, and it's nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. I look forward to it. I suppose that'll happen one day.
Yeah. Well, do you live in the country, or you're more
No,
of like
I
you're in the
live
city
in,
now?
yeah, I'm living in a city. The films you see in the country is my parents' ranch, basically.
But
I like to go out and
okay, okay, okay.
we go out and stay with them. On the weekends sometimes. It's real cool. Just family hanging out together, and sometimes I work out there and help them gardening. They have a big garden, and I like to help with that and get some of the food. And we just have pretty close family, and the grandkids love to be with their grandparents and stuff. So
No, that's
when
really
I'm
nice.
yeah,
That's what it's all about. You know,
yeah,
especially when it's tight and it's
yeah,
real. That's the best. Can't
yeah,
ask for anything more.
totally. That and it's so that's like sacred to me. Family time, especially for the kids and stuff when they're little, and it's just that's a big priority to always take care of family. I get pretty busy with a lot of things, but I like to prioritize making sure we get good quality family time and stuff because your kids are only they're only little kids for
Only kids
so
for so
long.
long, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you miss that.
that's so true. But you're pretty active in their life, man, because you're like you homeschool them, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
by that definition alone, and you also feed them very well.
yeah,
You make sure that everything is on point, so that this so mentally, physically, everything they're fully developed.
yeah, yeah. It means a lot to me. I get to be here. I get to be with them a lot of the time, and the challenge of that is as a male with all this aggression and stuff is being impatient with little kids
Ah, yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's challenging, but you don't have to be a perfect dad, whatever that is. When you're a dedicated dad, it means the world to your kids. I can tell. So and furthermore, when they see me get impatient, well, they do it too. They're boys. They
Yeah,
have that
they got all that
shit.
aggression in them.
Yeah, yeah. So then they know, it's okay. Dad does this too, and life goes on. It's okay. We all have tempers. We all yell once in a while, but we're really close, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm enjoying schooling them at home. At first, I was a little overwhelmed, a little intimidated by whatever responsibility that was, but
Okay,
I'm about 3 years into that now, and it's going really well. It's getting better all the time.
very good. So like,
Yeah.
is your oldest son in the third grade then, or he
He's
went?
he's in second grade. Yeah, he went to kindergarten first, second, and my younger son's in kindergarten right now.
Awesome, really cool.
Yeah.
And do you plan on continuing the homeschooling process all the way till graduation?
The way I think of it is when either one of them gets to an age where they may have an opinion about that, like if they want to try public
Yeah.
school or something, then we can do that if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of leave it up to them at that point. But the way this program works, it's really cool. They send you the whole curriculum, and my older son's already to the point where he almost doesn't need my help with any of it already.
Okay.
He just needs me to oversee to make sure everything gets done. But um, and basically that's the way this is going to go. It's going to get to where they can get through their schoolwork at their own pace each day and have more free time and be able to do more other things. And to me, that's so valuable because I went to public school and it was like a lot of wasted hours just going through
Totally. A
social.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
But what I recall is lying down on the table and sleeping. That's what I used to do. I was so bored out of my mind, and I would daydream all the time. They thought I was deaf at some point.
really?
I swear to God. And every time I would get a report card, they would always write, "He can't pay attention. He doesn't listen," which is true. I'd never listen. I would just sleep all day and I'd be daydreaming about games and stuff like that. I find it really stifles you. You know, you like
Yeah.
boys want to move, boys want to be active. We want to be creative and have fun,
Yeah.
especially when the stuff is easy too. Like for me, it was a joke, the content, so I would just sleep all day. You know?
That's hilarious, man. It's like you say. I mean, it's the most unnatural thing in the world to put a bunch
It's
of kids
horrible.
in
Yeah.
a room and make them sit still all day. You know, that's crazy. Your story reminds me of my dad. He was the same way. They said, "Oh, he can't pay attention. He's the worst student." You
Yeah.
know, and he actually didn't do good in school because he didn't pay attention at all.
Okay.
But his IQ is like 180 or something. You know, it's just he couldn't be interested in that stuff. It was just so boring to him. He could not focus.
Yeah.
He could rebuild an engine by the time he was 8 years old, but he
For real.
barely learned how to
Crazy.
spell because he couldn't pay attention in school. You know. So I know that happens sometimes. The kids, they say, "Oh, he's got ADHD or whatever." It's just because that kid's got a very interesting mind that's going really fast on something else, and they're just bored by that curriculum, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of these conditions are, first of all, we can't even prove that they exist, for one. And a lot of them are actually voted in by the DSM. They're voted, all right? They're not proven, clinically proven, you know?
Really, it's basically just a label. It's just to say that if you don't behave what's considered average, we're going to give you a label and say you have a disease, you know?
Yeah.
When really you're probably just smart and bored.
There, yeah,
That's all it is.
exactly. Smart and bored. That's the best way I'll describe it for a lot of people. Now, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are exceptions, obviously, but I
Hmm.
think in most cases, when a boy has trouble sitting down and he's doing well in school and he understands all the content, but he's just bored out of his goddamn mind and he can't pay attention, there's probably good reason for it. And it's not
Yeah.
because he has mental problems, you know?
No, that's such a cop out to give him a label like there's something wrong with your kid. And then that's one thing, but when they try to make kids take like Ritalin and shit,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
I disagree with
terrible.
that. Fuck that,
Yeah,
man.
that ain't right. It messes up their whole endocrine system just because the kid's got a unique mind, you know. There's
Yeah. Or if it's not a unique mind per se, usually it's faulty nutrition. You know, the
Yeah,
parents aren't feeding their kids properly, and they have all kinds of problems that affect their behavior in a sense. So I think a lot of that could be corrected with good food.
absolutely. Yes. Man, I think there's probably a lot of studies showing that already that, certain nutrients, if you
Oh
give
yeah,
these to your
definitely,
kids, they get
definitely.
better grades, their behavior, and just like you say, it's just because their body feels antsy and nervous and out of balance. It's hard to behave when you feel like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think that alone would create massive change, you know, globally, like everywhere, you know. And it's also the environment too, all the toxins and the plastics and all that.
Yeah.
um, Not really good, especially for men. And I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
one of the reasons why. I mean, we know this; it's a fact that men have lower T levels. So
Yeah.
we can only imagine what's going on when they're kids. I mean, how that leads to their development when they're older.
Right, right. Yeah, a lot of these kids I mean, I don't mean to be offensive, but when I see guys who I have to study them for a while to make sure it's actually a dude, like I really can't tell. And this is an
Oh
adult.
man.
I just think to myself, man, you poor guy. It's like your endocrine glands never really fully
Yeah,
turn
I feel
on.
bad. I feel really bad. There's guys in their 20s who have the testosterone levels of a 90-year-old man, which is
Yeah, yeah,
insane. That's absolutely insane.
it is.
Yeah.
And but it really, people people need to think about that, what that
Yeah,
means, you
what
know.
it means exactly. Yeah.
It applies to everybody. I mean, um, those of us that are going out of our way to avoid those things, we're doing really well. And that's another way to look at this for people is, take the medium of competition, like sports competition, and realize everybody's so concerned. Is this guy using a performance enhancing drug? Is this guy using a performance enhancing drug? And what people don't even think about most of the time is if one guy would reduce all the toxins out of his body, that would be like a huge performance enhancing drug for him. His performance would be so much better without doing anything illegal and only doing something that's positive for health. People underestimate the kind of athletic benefits that can come from being healthy. They don't even consider that. They just think it's all about drugs or no drugs,
Right.
And man, I'm fully convinced that with good enough nutrition and lifestyle and mindset, you can outperform anybody on any drug at almost anything. There's going to be certain cases where, all other things being equal, the guy that's 100 pounds bigger because of all his drug use is probably going to lift more on that particular lift. But for most athletic things, I don't think that these drugs are doing as much benefit to people as they actually think they are. In most cases, it just puts them in a different weight class. That's all it does. It doesn't really improve their, to me, it doesn't improve their athleticism or their performance as much as they're giving it credit for. I
As
really
much as they're giving you credit for. Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Well, I know for some things it's less important, like when it requires like extreme skill, you know,
yeah, yeah,
like that's
exactly.
more of a pattern that you have to learn over a long period of time. Like you can't. I don't think that drugs is gonna help you learn how to do a snatch, for example.
No,
You
no,
need to
yeah,
be coached properly, and that usually comes at a young age. You have to have the right build as well, and that's a different ball game in a sense, you
yeah.
know. Or like I don't know, being a badminton player or something. Is it gonna help that much? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
Yeah,
depends. It does depend. But I think for a lot of things, like especially when they don't train properly, I think that's when it has a significant effect. You know.
yeah.
But if their training is actually on point, then they don't need as much drugs. And we saw this with Pete Rubish, for example, who used to be taking a lot of stuff and obviously got very strong with it. But now he takes like 3 times less, but he's stronger than he ever was because
Hmm.
his training's gotten better and he's acquired more experience.
Yep.
So, in my personal belief, I think the drugs they make a huge difference when, especially if they're training improperly. If
Yeah.
you dial in everything the proper way, then it's like you're saying, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on the sport. Like in bodybuilding, obviously, a natural
Oh yeah, that's
competing
everything.
against this guy, that's
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
But a lot of sports, it's like having muscles that are more swollen, full of fluids than they normally would be. There's actually situations where that's more of a hindrance than it is a help.
yeah,
If, for example, like fighting, a lot of fighters take drugs and some don't. But what I've noticed is it's when I see two fighters in a match that are going to fight, I don't look at the guy who looks stronger and go, "Oh, he's going to win," because that has almost nothing to do with
yeah.
fighting.
You can't determine it just off the looks, obviously.
Yeah. So I've seen guys that were like skinny fat just dominate somebody that looks straight like a bodybuilder. And so I'm like, well, all the drugs didn't help that guy, because who cares if he's got 20-inch arms if he can't if he's not faster, if he's not
Yeah.
more skillful. It's probably just giving his cardio a negative bump, in the wrong direction
Mm.
and being a little more swollen than he naturally would be for his frame. So I don't know. In obviously in powerlifting and bodybuilding and things like that, things like steroids are very relevant. They make a very real difference. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's a lot of kids out there and athletes just taking those drugs, assuming it's helping them with their sport. And in some of their cases, it's probably just shortening their career, not helping them as much as they think it is.
Okay. Well, I know, and I think people are getting on the stuff way too early. First of all, and it's they're doing it when they're not at the right stage, if you will. Like if you're
Yeah,
not the best of the best, why are you on a bunch of drugs? It doesn't make sense,
exactly,
you know?
exactly. And if you're not going to compete as a professional bodybuilder, you're not going to take.
Yeah, like why? Like if you're an amateur boxer, for instance, why do you have to be on a bunch of drugs? You're an amateur. You're not a professional or whatever.
Yeah, it's
You
just
know what
they're
I mean?
going to beat
So
up they're going to beat up their body, and they're going to end up with all the wear and tear, but none of the professional success, because
yeah, it's like that's the thing. If you're making a bunch of money doing it and you're the world's strongest man or whatever, then okay, fine, that's a
Mhm.
different story. But if you're just some average guy, a recreational lifter, or you're an amateur, whatever, then you don't need drugs for that. Just spend
Yeah,
more time working on your skill, get stronger, you'll be good. You know?
yeah, yeah. Like the difference between Arnold and his competition. They all used probably about the same drugs, and they all did similar exercises. But one thing about Arnold is he would pretend to be Mr. Fun-loving party animal just to get other guys to loosen up, and then he'd go sneak in extra workouts when they weren't.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so
pretty
it's like,
funny.
yeah, all other things being equal, the champ had to just work harder than everybody else because they were all using the same things. And I honestly believe that a lot of those guys, when they talk about how whatever doses they were using in those days were like minuscule compared to what even kids that are just walking into a gym without any training history and going, "Hey, you want to
Yeah,
sell me some gear?" And they don't even know what they're taking, and they're taking astronomical doses, and they don't know that they don't even know how to train. So whenever they run out of gear, they just deflate and lose everything they thought they had
yeah,
because they didn't actually build any muscle. They just
exactly.
temporarily inflated it with fluids.
Hmm.
and then they end up with worse hormone consequences, and they just start this train of dependency.
Hmm.
They're like teenagers. That's
Yeah,
insane.
that's the crazy part, and they don't even understand the long term consequences either. Because I honestly I don't believe it's healthy to be on that stuff. You can't convince me that it's healthy to be
No.
injecting all these drugs into your body. How can you? It just doesn't compute. Now I'll hear guys on forums saying, "Oh, if you do it right," but the question is, are you doing it right? I mean, people don't even have proper nutrition. They're getting
Yeah,
that wrong, and you want me to believe that shoving a needle up your ass from some black market source is going to be fine? I'm
yeah,
very very skeptical when people make those claims. You know?
yeah, yeah. Anytime you're sticking a needle in you with something, that you have to have total faith that whoever, whatever company out there that's making money is someone you can trust. And we all know that's not always the case.
Yeah.
There could be a disease in that for all you know. I mean, it's pretty crazy to be shoving things into your bloodstream that you don't really know actually what's actually in it, you know. And and so I oh shit, lost my train of thought.
All good. Happens to me all the time. Hmm. Then I'll just elaborate then, since I have some fun things to say. Do you think that if someone is on low dose, that it could be done safe, or do you still believe that it's going to cause long-term negative side effects?
Well, I would say it's like anything. A low dose of synthetic hormones is just going to be one minor insult to your body. I think if a person is healthy in every other way, they got great nutrition, great mindset, all these things, they're probably never going to have any serious health calamity from taking a low dose of a synthetic hormone. But I know that it's the math is there in a cause and effect universe. There is some kind of a consequence. You're not as healthy as you could be otherwise.
Okay.
So it's like, some people will be able to get away with that and still be relatively healthy because they're doing so many other things right with their health, and maybe they have good genetics and whatever else, good mindset. But it's a negative. It's just to what degree, I don't really know. I
Right.
realize that some of the drugs out there are way more toxic than others, obviously, and a low dose hormone replacement therapy is probably pretty minor insult to your body. But I've heard studies about still having cholesterol go the wrong way and having DHEA drop and fall off the charts and progesterone fall off the charts. So in other words, there's even though you may have enough testosterone now, there's other important
Yeah.
hormones I
Exactly.
believe that are actually being shut down that
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
don't even know yet the full consequences of not having those other assisting hormones in your body anymore, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I think that's a great point. And people they like to isolate it to testosterone, but it's your whole endocrine system. There's
Hmm.
various hormones that we don't fully understand, and it works in in unison, if you will, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if one little thing is off, it doesn't just have to be testosterone. That's gonna wreak havoc on your body over time.
Yep. Yeah, and I bet you, Alex, I bet we don't even have a name yet for all the different hormones that
I bet for
the
sure. Like
mouth.
we can't even translate DNA to its full extension right now. You know,
Exactly.
like they call it junk DNA right now.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right. Like there's
so
some accident and most of what we got's there for no reason, you know?
yeah,
That
so
to me that's a sad view.
yeah,
But
it's still pretty early, you know, with the whole science thing. But I think we will discover more hormones, more things in the body. I think even last week, or was it 2 weeks ago or something, they found a new organ, like a really small organ in the body. I'm not
oh man,
entirely sure. I don't know if it's a hoax, but they found something that they never studied before in the human body.
far out, man. I bet it's real, and I feel like we humans assume that it's like we've got 90% of it mapped out. I think it's totally the opposite. I think we got like,
I think we know so little in the
yeah,
grand scheme of things. I think we know so little. Yeah.
exactly. We've just begun. This is our science. I talk shit sometimes about this and that, as far as man-made this or that or the other. But I fully support science. I believe that
Yeah,
humanity,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's in our nature. We need to improve our science. That I just believe it's in a really primitive state, and that's why I criticize some of it because I don't see it working very well. And I know that there's a lot more to the picture that just isn't being included, and that's why it's not working so well.
For sure.
So it's just when humans assume that it's like we got it all figured out, that's a red flag to me. It's like that's not having any perspective. The more accurate perspective is we've just started to dabble with our understanding of some of these elements. So to
Exactly.
base your whole to base your whole philosophy of life on what little science we have so far just doesn't make sense,
It's foolishness. It's complete insanity, if you ask me. To base your life off things that are subject to change and probably will change. You know.
Yep, yep. They're going to have to just keep rewriting and revising those theories and everything as we go forward. So, and
Exactly.
that's the good news. That's the good news. There's so much more to explore, you know?
Yeah. It's like that sense of wonder, knowing that there's so
Yeah,
much more.
exactly. I mean, it's weird that a lot of people become afraid when they hear that, and that tells me, you know, their belief system for life is really fear-based. So the idea
Yeah.
of any change is going to be a bad thing, instead of realizing, come on, man, life on this earth is far from ideal. We need lots of change, and we need positive change, you know? But but I guess that comes down to whether you're coming from a fear-based philosophy or not, you know?
Mm. So we okay. So you touched upon it. Fear-based philosophies. Would you say that's like one should not be approaching it from that perspective? Like I
Yeah.
know we can even talk about certain religious beliefs, if you will, but a lot of it is fear-based. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everything I've learned has shown me that humans cannot think right, cannot perceive information right, cannot use information well when they're afraid. So this is, I mean, I don't want to point fingers and start, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
making up conspiracy theories, but when you look around the world, the way different groups are controlled, that's how it's always done. They tell people, okay, you got to be afraid of this, but if you pay me this money or you give up this freedom or this right, then you don't have to be afraid of it anymore. This is how you convince groups of people to go along with anything. You just have to scare them first, and then they'll even give up their own rights and freedoms because you're telling them there's this thing you need to be afraid of, so you need to sign away more of your freedoms.
Yeah.
That I can install a camera in your house and watch everything you do. Okay, whatever, to feel safe again, you know. That there's no wisdom behind that. When humans are afraid, they're like a deer in the headlights. They're very much more likely to make the big mistake than
Hmm.
if. Now, caution is separate from
Yeah.
fear. You know, we need caution. That's what stops you from walking out in front of a bus. But you don't need to be afraid of the bus. If you're afraid of the bus, you're more likely to screw up and trip and fall in front of the bus. But if you just have caution but no fear, you can just go, yeah, I don't want to step in front of a bus. I don't want to get squished, you know?
Yeah.
There's no need to fear that because fear just makes, I think fear makes people's IQs just go,
Mm.
you know, down to practically nothing.
Well, yeah.
So,
It instills a very emotional state where you just can't think logically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Take
essentially what
away.
it does. So, like, how does one escape this fear-based mindset?
To me, what's helped me a lot is going back and rooting out all my beliefs and determining for myself that these beliefs are just something I was told, and they don't actually have anything backing them up. And so, through a lot of self work, a lot of inner work, I've gone back and I've rewritten my own philosophy of life to be one that's supportive of life instead of one that's trying to have you just scared shitless all the time. You know,
Yeah.
because it turns out that in like you're saying, you know, religions, governments, different institutions in this world, they really like to approach everything from the side of teaching you everything to be afraid of. But then that, to me, that just keeps things the way they are because people go, oh, that I don't want to mess with that. I'll just kind of go along with things, and you know, there's too many things to be afraid of. There's too many dangers, blah 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 blah. And when you're thinking that way, you don't really you don't rock the boat. You don't change anything in this world. But if you're coming from a place of passion, and what I was calling love earlier, which I don't mean it in the sappy ooey gooey. I just mean passion for life, like life energy, love for life itself.
Hmm.
I think if people are coming from that vibration, it's easy for them to be creative. It's easy for them to have high standards and big visions for what's possible. And for some reason, all the philosophies circulating this world right now are the opposite of that. They're not all, but a lot of the ones that are rampant on this world. They have people very disempowered, very afraid, very you know, like victim mentality, like somebody has all the power and I don't have any power and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's not true. If each of us starts owning our own responsibility, we'll find power coming into our lives that comes with it, you know?
Yeah.
So people need to be honest with themselves and say, if you feel disempowered, it's because right now you're not owning your power because you're afraid of the responsibility that comes with it. So when you get rid of that fear and you accept the responsibility that comes with your own power, then you get to decide what to do with that power. and whatever you think's the best way to use it, whichever kind of power you're talking about, if it's influence or resources or, whatever it is, achievements. There's many forms of power, but it's so common in this world for people to be living from that victim mindset because they don't realize, you got a lot of fears and self-limiting beliefs, and if you didn't have those, you could find that you're very powerful. You just have to be willing to take the responsibility that comes with power, because when you're powerful, you influence things. You make changes in this world. It affects other people. It affects things. So
Right.
you have to be willing to shoulder that and believe in what you're doing, so you can feel right about it and be willing to own your own power.
Yeah, that's very powerful what you just said, and there's a lot of good points. And one thing that you mentioned, and I hear this a lot, right? The term vibration or consciousness. Can you just explain to the viewers what that is? Like when you say you're lowering your vibration, or using that terminology.
Sure. It's like it's just a word for an idea, but there is actually frequencies of vibration with things like sound, color, and when it comes to consciousness, you could say that those different frequencies are like changing the station. It's like
Right.
changing the radio signal, what it's connected to. And the idea with vibration, like if you look at a rainbow and you see those colors, red is the lowest vibrational color. And then as it goes up that spectrum, the colors change because of the frequency of vibration. And those colors correlate with the human chakras, but let's not get out there. But the idea is that when people in the New Age are talking about increasing or raising up your vibration, what they really mean in a practical sense is the difference between who I am now and who I was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe in humanity. I didn't believe there was any point in any of this, really. Now I can see so clearly that there's so much point to all of it, And every day I get out of bed inspired because I believe in what I'm doing and I believe it's working, and I'm believing in people. Now I'm attracting people like yourself that is like awesome and gives me hope for humanity because my vibration changed. So now I'm open to better experiences, a better perspective on life, and I'm being much more effective. Like I'm a better version of me, whatever I am. And any disempowering belief people have or fear, it brings that consciousness vibration down. It has you in a place of doubt, in a place of fear where you're stuck and you're not very effective in your own life because of those thoughts and feelings that you keep experiencing every day, So that's kind of a general practical idea what New Agers are calling vibration,
Okay, awesome. And if people want to learn more about that content of that nature, they can refer to your metaphysical channel, yeah?
Yeah, sure. It's called Pathfinder. No, it's called Cosmic Pathfinder Channeling.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it at that for those particular topics, and
Okay.
we'll go back to fitness once more.
Yes.
So let's go.
Yes.
All right.
Keep us on track here, man. Keep us on track.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a helium balloon.
I
You
think it's
know,
just how we're vibing it out and talking. Things
yeah,
just we end up in talking about different things, just
yeah,
naturally.
yeah.
So we addressed all the major muscle groups. We talked about the arms, the chest. No, did we talk about the chest? Yeah, we did. The back, calves. Yeah, we pretty much covered everything. So we can talk a little bit more about strength development, and then we can end it off like that.
Oh, sounds awesome. So when you're talking strength development, the first thing that comes to my mind is out of all the things about lifting weights, and I have a feeling you might be very similar. As much as I care about physique, and I do, I'm vain, I'm an artist, I want myself to look a certain, I work hard on that sculpture, but even more important to me is strength. If I had a choice between looking like I don't lift but being freaky strong, deceptively strong,
Mm-hmm.
or looking like a bodybuilder but being weak for my size, I would be the guy who looks like nothing and he's three times stronger than he looks. To me, that's even more important than physique.
Yeah. So if I can cut you off right there,
Sure.
if you were able to lose, say, 20 pounds of muscle, but you would gain 30% more strength, right? So you'd be
Oh,
smaller physically, but you're going to be pound for pound better. Would you choose that?
yes, because that would be, oh my God, that would be phenomenal. I mean, that would be just record-setting crazy.
Okay.
That's special. That's exceptional. And there's nothing wrong. like I admire different physique types. I can visualize a much lighter version of me that I would still like, you know, putting all the right things in the right places. So totally, because
Okay.
the sheer incredibleness of what that would be like. Because I'm pound for pound really strong now.
Yeah.
So if I could lose 30 pounds and be 30% stronger, oh my God, that would be super duper athlete. You know, that'd be like the most elite thing.
It'd be crazy. But do you think
Yeah.
it's possible, or you're carrying too much mass at this point?
I think it's possible. I'm a little fluffier than I even want to be right now. So for me to lose 30 pounds, I can be very strong at 210. In fact, I've set some of my personal bests at a weight somewhere around there, you know. So I find, and I've said this before on my channel, I don't know what the ratio is on different people, but I feel like with me, most of my strength is more from the nervous system. It's not even from the muscle mass,
Yep.
because whenever I focus on a 1 rep max, I can make mad gains at that really fast without my body even having time to get bigger from it, you know.
Hmm.
That tells me right there a lot of it's nervous system based for me. And I really believe if you train specifically for power, you can gain a lot of power without gaining hardly any size at all, you know.
Okay. So for someone who needs like that pound for pound performance, they don't want to enter a different weight class, it would be beneficial to train
Hmm.
more like that compared to
Definitely.
like bodybuilding style program. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would have them do, you know, kind of the way I do 1 rep max stuff, just right to the point. And we'd probably do that on all their muscle groups, just build max explosive power and density. But when you keep the volume that low, some people won't even gain a pound. They'll lean out a little bit. That's
Mm.
all. Yeah. And they'll be like twice as strong as they were, you know, 6 months before that.
Okay. And are there any techniques besides the 1 rep maxes that'll improve your nervous system function?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. In fact, I did a segment of static contraction training a long time ago, and that really improved my nervous system strength. Now, granted, as you know, it didn't translate right away into full range strength,
Okay.
but it did translate into nervous system strength. I was like in early 20s, and I got used to, for example, holding 700 pounds in my strongest point on a bench press,
Yep.
just hold it for like 10 seconds. And that did just that kind of all out, every ounce of willpower you got going through your nervous system. Um, it upgraded the nervous system. It really
Right.
does.
Yeah.
Think you're giving it everything you got in short bursts. That really, I think it almost makes your nervous system have a higher amperage over time, where like more energy flow can go
Yeah.
through it at one time. You know?
I agree. I feel that. Sorry. I feel that partials strengthen the tendons and ligaments, so
Yeah.
actually prevent injuries. Okay,
Yep.
like for example, the zerches that you're doing now, you'll pretty much never tear a bicep when you get good at
Yeah.
that. And it also enhances your nervous system big time. Like for me personally, if I do a heavy rack pull above the knee, and you make me overhead press right after, it feels light. It feels really, really, really light. Like because that's what it's doing. It's priming your nervous system. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally believe in stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't wait till they have equipment in the future. You know how they kind of have like infrared cameras?
Yeah.
I want a camera that shows that flow of energy. Like when a lifter's lifting something, shows
Yeah.
his
How cool would
nervous.
that be? That would be
Yeah.
so cool. Where you just see, yeah. I can envision that.
Wouldn't that be cool? You could see the differences. Like one guy will just be lighting it up like a light bulb, and you're like, oh my,
Exactly, yeah.
look at his mind muscle connection. That's crazy, you know?
Yeah.
I think
I,
we'll have something like that someday.
for sure. It's no doubt. Now, do you think there are any supplements that one could take for that? Like I think like sunflower lecithin, that's more for your brain, right? But does that affect your performance in lifting?
Yeah. Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's not like a stimulant. It's not like you can go take sunflower lecithin and you're going to go hit a PR. But over time, because it's taking better care of your nerves and you're training your nerves so hard, it's just going to allow you to take your progress further because you're taking better care of your nervous system.
Hmm.
It's one of those deals, you know. No like immediate performance benefit, but you know, I'm sure our nerves get tore up in a sense or overloaded the same way our muscle fibers do. So we eat protein, we do certain things for the muscle fibers to compensate and come back better. Sunflower lecithin would be one of those things for your nervous system itself, so it can come back better. It's getting fed better, you know, so your recovery and your upgrades there are going to be better over time.
Yeah. And I feel that also things like fruits would be beneficial for that. because of the electricity and all that. You know.
Yeah, 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 and the higher quality soil and all that. I've seen where they showed a conventional fruit and an organic fruit, and they look the same to the naked eye, but then they measured it like electronically, and you could see the energy in it. There's a big difference. So
Okay.
you like, it's so elemental. It's like which soil was that grown in, and which earth elements was it able to, charge itself with electrically or whatever.
Yeah. Now, sometimes when people lift really, really heavy, like they'll get adrenal fatigue, and then they'll
Mhm.
end up getting sick. Like, and I think this happened to you when you were
Yeah.
talking at the beginning, and I
Yep.
think even myself, I was experiencing this. I noticed that the more PRs I got and the stronger I got, once in a while you just get sick for no reason, and it was not a nutrition issue, because us lifters we tend to eat pretty clean,
Yep.
so it could actually be the heavy lifting too, you know.
Yep. Yeah, it turns out that a lot of the things that have to repair after really heavy lifting draws on all the same resources our immune system's using. So it just becomes like it's like fighting on too many fronts. Your
Yeah.
soldiers get pulled two directions, and then your immune system's not quite strong enough, and you catch a virus,
Yeah.
and yeah.
So, yeah, if someone has a bunch of dark circles under their eyes, would you recommend any specific protocol?
Dark circles usually is kidneys and adrenal related in most of my research. So um, anything that benefits kidney function, there's a lot of herbs for that. Anything that benefits adrenal function, which is so rampant in society.
Mm,
We got a society where even people that don't lift have adrenal function just because of feeling stressed all the time.
yeah.
So those of us that physically pile just tonnage and tonnage of demands on top of that, we're you know I don't know if adrenal glands can actually grow and get muscular, but if they can, ours are probably like all, because they've been through hell. But yeah, all the nutrition, like in the Nether Better upgrade, that all supports, it's all synergistic. And I've noticed that, yes, there are things that are specifically mostly aimed at like one gland or whatever, but I found that when you just take care of all the systems of the body, whichever system you start to improve,
Yeah.
some of your body's energy now gets devoted to healing on another system because it's not struggling with this one. So
Hmm.
I found just by integrating all these health boosts all at the same time, things like a, a huge plethora of conditions are all improved by that, including adrenal fatigue. A lot of it is nutrition. And then the other biggest factor that helped me was my whole change in philosophy. I used to be a super stressed out, worried person, and I am so much more at peace now that I'm not causing my adrenals to just be firing like I'm at war all day. They used to just feel like fight or flight, 24/7, and that's no way to live. And I think a lot of people are kind of caught in that stress cycle and they don't really know it, but they're living kind of that fear-based philosophy that's got them stressed all the time.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you said before about the whole lifestyle thing, and how they're not following their passion and they're just doing what everyone told them to do, and they have these really like self-limiting beliefs, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that also leads to a bunch of stress, obviously. So, yeah, it goes
yeah,
back to that as well.
yeah. And then you get into those patterns of negative thinking about yourself, like, my life sucks because I'm a piece of crap or whatever. You try that shoe on for a while. Like maybe if I blame me, all this will make sense. I tried that, never worked. Then you try blaming other people, doesn't fix anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And it takes that inner work. You have to dig deeper and get back to the root of where it really started from. And then you realize, oh man, I have beliefs that are just no good. They're just not helping me in life.
Right.
They're as well-meaning as somebody was who passed these on, and maybe these beliefs served some purpose 1,000 years ago, but they're not working now. And and people, uh, not to really get into religion, but people act like prophets only existed thousands of years ago, and somehow that just stopped. Like no wisdom can come into the world anymore. Which is, again, that's a completely ridiculous assumption. So we're all walking around with certain keys inside of us that if we'll just look in there and share it, man, people benefit if they're open to it. So to me, that's half of adrenal healing right there, is just your life philosophy,
Yeah.
learning to be at peace with yourself instead of at war with yourself all the time.
Very interesting. So, going back to strength training, do you feel that neck training enhances your nervous system function?
Well, a part of me wants to say it must, because when you look at a human body, the way everything's wired, your neck's like this choking point, like a bottle point, where all the information from your entire body passes right through here to your head in both directions, right?
Yeah.
So I figure anything you do to improve your neck in any way, shape, or form is somehow going to strengthen the connection from brain to the rest of the body. And um, it's also smart for anybody who's involved with any kind of a potentially violent sport because your neck's
Yeah.
probably the easiest way to die if you think about
It's
it.
the most important thing, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. You don't want to get a concussion or anything.
Oh, no, and to have something broken or out of place in your neck, that would just be such a pain in the ass. So I think it's really, really wise the way you prioritize that. I don't, like I've told people, I don't really do a lot of direct neck training because I'm so strong there genetically, but
Okay.
I do my holds. Um, like I do bridges and stuff like that because it builds a lot of strength. I'm not even concerned with trying to necessarily bodybuild and get it bigger, but
Okay.
I do believe that having that strength gives you integrity in your neck. That's important.
And in terms of integrity, what are some of the key muscle groups that you found help the most with injury prevention?
Ever since I started doing the external work on shoulders, that was big. I knew nothing about that, like most noobs. For like 15 years of lifting, I didn't even know there was such.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've had irritated shoulders many, many times. I've always recovered from it, but I noticed, you know, since prioritizing that much more, my shoulders are better. They perform better in every way. Another thing I found, those of us in society, we tend to sit in cars, sit on buses, sit in chairs at computers. So we get that short hamstring thing going on.
Yeah.
And, it's really easy to pull hamstrings when you don't know how short and tight they are. So one thing I've been doing, I just take like a wooden bar, it weighs nothing, and I just kind of, I'll do like Romanians almost or stiff legs, but I'll just do really high rep, and I kind of, once they're warm, I'm kind of bouncing deeper and deeper into the stretch. Man, my range of motion improved so much on my legs, I couldn't even believe it. I've always been really inflexible where I could barely touch my toes,
Yeah.
and now I can like if this is my foot, I can put my hand this far over my foot
Okay.
now.
Nice.
I just did that one day and I didn't even know that I had gained that flexibility. And I was like, what is going on? This is incredible. And I can feel in my legs that the knees are happier. Um, the muscles are more balanced. There's less of a tension imbalance between different muscles in the legs. And I know that that's very much made me more resistant to injury, you know, because a lot of people, they got the bad posture and they got a lot of hip and lower back troubles. And a lot of that is related, I believe, to those tight hamstrings because we spend too much time
Yeah.
with contracted hamstring position.
Sitting honestly kills us. It's probably the
Yeah,
worst thing you can do when you do it for long periods of time.
yeah,
Some guys actually recommend a standing desk to eliminate that problem.
yeah.
It's
That would be
it's an
cool.
interesting idea, but I feel like it would be hard to write on a standing desk, or do
Yeah,
specific very hard work, or even gaming.
yeah. It'd be cool is if I don't know if they do that. I heard somewhere, maybe it's Japan, I don't know, but if it was normal in society, even at like office cubicle jobs, to have a few 15-minute periods a day where everybody just stopped and did like their stretches and a little bit of calisthenics
Mm-hmm.
or something just to be healthy, because they've already shown with the data that if you do that, the amount of money that gets saved on like health issues
Yeah,
is totally worth
it's so
it.
worth it.
Yeah,
It's worth it for a multitude of reasons. For one, the workers will perform better. Okay,
yeah,
because just taking a small break, it makes all the difference in terms of your performance. Contrary to what some people think, if you're just working 8 hours straight or whatever, that's not really good on your mind. You know,
yeah,
so taking
yeah,
a small, a tiny little break that helps, and even if it's circulation, like physical activity,
yeah.
and even you're talking about the taxes too, like that's yeah, tremendously beneficial.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If society would give it a chance, like you say, people are caught in this mindset where you're supposed to be a robot and just be efficient and work for as many hours straight as you can. But we're not robots, and we have emotions, and we're complex beings. And taking the time to take a little bit of care of people, like you said, their productivity and their happiness goes up. They're
Yep.
going to enjoy their job and be more productive and fight with each other less. And it's just, I don't know. It just makes so much sense, but I guess it takes a while for an idea like that to be more
Yeah.
to catch on more.
Now, I was curious about some of the Zercher lifts that you do. Are you ever going to be doing like really deep positions where you're like rounded back to the max? or it's not really one of your interests?
I'll definitely do it. I don't know if I'll worry about even trying to max out or anything. I
Okay.
might just do that like with a moderate weight, just to go through the motion, just for the health, get a
Okay.
little extra volume that way. I'm just not like for me that position. Uh, I know it's not as dangerous as it looks, but I almost cringe when I see people even doing it with a back totally rounded, folded completely in half. I know it's okay, and I'm still going to do it, but um, I don't think I'll challenge myself
Like as
to
hard
like
as the one that
maxing
you're
out.
doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, I just these days I just like to keep the really ridiculously heavy stuff to a limited range of motion because, like you say, you build your nervous system, you build your skeletal system, you build muscle mass. You know, you're getting those three really important things just out of doing that,
Yeah.
and then you can include some full range stuff just for health, mobility, extra volume. You know,
Okay,
so
so all right, so here's a good one then. Would you just do like your heavy one rep maxes, like the serious strength training on the partials, and then you just do volume on the full range?
yeah, I do that often actually. That's how I train a lot of times.
Okay.
Um, I consider like the one rep max stuff is just about usually it's just about setting a PR to challenge myself that way. And then when that's over, I go, okay, now I'm going more into bodybuilding mode. I'm going to do
Yeah.
some volume. I'm going to make sure I tax the muscles enough. You know, I'm going to go through more of a range of motion, maybe get some stretch overload, and you know, it it I know people say, "Oh, that's ego lifting," and I'm like, "So, like, okay, so my ego wants to lift something heavy, and I just lifted something really heavy. I consider that a good thing, you know. I don't even understand exactly why that's a criticism because when I'm done ego lifting, then I can just go do my volume stuff and my technique stuff, and I can
Yeah.
do everything
Well,
else.
you know what it is? They're gonna say that it's not testing strength because that's what they're gonna argue,
Yeah.
and that it increases your risk of injury. Now, the way that I see it, if your body's in good health, okay, and you've been working up for this for a long period of time, then you're not gonna get injured.
Right.
Like I don't foresee an injury on like I released a video the other day on weighted chin ups and I was doing negatives, and they're
Hmm.
like, dude, you're gonna tear your bicep off. But it's like I really doubt that. I don't
Yeah.
think that's ever gonna happen to me doing a freaking chin up. You know?
No, no. And and you know that mentality, that whole like, oh, you're gonna get injured. Well, that mean like if that's your mentality, then whether you know it or not, when you're going to work out, that's kind of your philosophy. That is, if I go too heavy here, I'm going to break something. That's
Yeah,
how you already believe down deep.
exactly. Yeah,
So you know you're setting a um, lower passion, a lower standard for whatever your workout's going to be because you're already too afraid to even challenge yourself. And the way guys like you and me are looking at it is like that's how you build the strong tendons. That's how you make yourself more bulletproof. You want to challenge it. You want to challenge it enough to make it stronger without breaking it. And over time, that's just how you get the more and more bulletproof tendons. If you avoid the issue and you try to, you know, build big muscles without ever lifting heavy, it's doable, but then you're like way more prone to injury because you have huge muscles, but you never really made your tendons or anything else strong enough
yeah,
to keep up with them. That just doesn't make any sense. So
yeah. And I think that's why all these bodybuilders get injured because they're not doing stuff like this. You know,
yeah, yeah,
it's like so if you never do something like this, then you attempt it, you might get injured. You know,
yep, definitely,
so
definitely,
that's the correlation right there. Even with the cheat rows, people are talking about how it's dangerous when they've never even done a cheat row.
right,
You
right.
know?
Yeah, and the thing is, any exercise could be dangerous if you do it like a dingbat. You know, it and people have to own that. Like
Yeah.
even the ones that are called the most safe, well, you could hurt yourself. You totally could. But at the end of the day, when we're gauging, like people tell me all the time, um, you shouldn't be starting out young people on your custom programs because it's so dangerous. And I'm like, that's an assumption. That's just a belief you have. There's nothing about these lifts that are any more difficult to learn than what you're calling the standard three. You
I
know,
agree. Yeah.
it's just a different lift. And honestly, bench press is not all that safe. Many people have wrecked their shoulders. You know, deadlifts are not that safe. Many people
Yeah.
have ruined their back. So
And you
I
know what? If we take it to like that intellectual level where it's not just experience based, these alternative movements are in fact safer from that perspective. For example, the weighted push up, it works with serratus, how you're moving through space. It's actually it's safer. You know,
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah.
irritate your body as much. You're not gonna mess up your shoulders or tear a pec or anything.
Right. Yeah, it's more natural. It's you know, it's a more natural movement.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the other thing about, a few generations into having societies and living in cities is everybody just forgets everything natural. Like they don't remember what it meant to be connected to the land, what it meant to function in a more natural
Yeah.
way. So now they're coming up and they're getting their whole belief about how everything works out of books. And books are great,
Well,
but you need to be able to discern for yourself and
yeah.
not just believe everything you read, you know?
Well, I'll tell you what they'll say about that. They're going to say it's the appeal to nature fallacy, which
Right.
intellectually is correct,
Yeah.
but sometimes you can learn some things from that
Yeah.
perspective, even if it's
That's
wrong in a debate. You know?
right, right. Yeah, and I'm not saying that going back to primitive ways of doing things is better. I wouldn't. I'm not trying to take it that degree.
Yeah.
It's just it's almost more the term grounded. People don't know what it means to be grounded because they don't remember like the natural elements of life, you know.
Mm.
And I know there's a lot of things about what we can do with our mind to improve upon certain things in nature and everything. So I I don't want to sound like I'm saying that, oh, let's just go back to nature because everything was right. Like I'm saying, I firmly believe we should push the boundaries of science and everything else about us. And even society has a lot of great benefits. I'm not against society. I think there's a lot of things we could do a lot better in society. And we don't have to forget everything about the natural world just because we're living in
Yeah.
our own man-made world now. There was a lot of cool things about nature that still apply, and we just shouldn't forget all that. We can take a lot of that with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we need to. I mean, it gets pretty deep when you start talking about stuff like this, but we need to borrow certain things from nature
Yeah,
while adopting a scientific mind at the same time,
yeah, yeah,
and with correct morals as well. You know,
yeah, yeah,
so it's like it's a combination of things. You know, it's not
yeah.
so black and white.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny how human nature, for the longest time, is always dividing things like it's either this or it's that. When in the end, it's actually all those things,
Yeah.
and what you can do with all of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to ask you a question about iodine. Okay.
Okay.
Now, your perspective, you said that because there's so many nuclear bombs that have been set off on this planet, it's just kind of bouncing around, and it
Hmm.
causes radiation and mutation and stuff like that, and that taking like 5 drops of iodine a day mixed with water will help with that,
Yeah.
prevent these negative problems.
Yeah. The thing is, like, even in a nuclear holocaust, they would say emergency medicine. If you can take iodine, you might survive, because your thyroid gland is basically your first defense against radiation. And when it has enough iodine, it can do that properly. But when it doesn't, and the mainstream food sources are depleted because the topsoils have been getting
Yeah.
used over and over. And so that's the issue. There used to be enough iodine in food, but nowadays, unless you eat a lot of seaweed or something, you're probably not getting enough. So I just tell people, look, man, radiation levels are higher than they should be, and that can cause mutation, and we're all dealing with it. And if you take your iodine, you can really shield yourself. And there's a bunch of other benefits. It's good for your immune system. It even increases androgen sensor receptivity, so it like makes your own hormones work better. Um, of course, thyroid function, it's needed for that, and a lot of people's thyroids aren't working right.
Hmm.
And I have a theory that part of that is both due to the lack of iodine as well as the higher radiation levels, that are prevalent on the planet now. But I don't like to say all that and scare people like you're all doomed because of all these nukes. I really think that this does a great job of compensating. And if you just take your iodine, you're going to have lots of different health benefits. So you can't really go wrong. And then you're covering your bases against like radiation too.
Okay.
And in a world where we're seeing so much mutation rates going up, it just makes sense.
Okay. Now, what about the people who say that taking iodine is dangerous? What are your thoughts on that?
In all my research, the worst thing I've seen happen to anybody when they took like big doses is they would get a thyroid storm and they'd feel all weird, mind racing, crazy feelings and stuff. But I didn't see anything that actually, basically, that's a detox reaction that can be really rough, and a person could do something crazy because they're feeling really weird. But that's why I tell people to just take a low dose. I'm not even telling them to go on like a high dose protocol, because there's alternative doctors out there that will put people on like 50 to 100 to 150 drops a day.
Really,
To
that much?
Oh
Holy
yeah,
moly.
yeah. I think the guy who's most famous for it, and he'd be the best reference on iodine, I believe his name is Dr. Brownstein, if I'm remembering that right. Um, and he's got like books on it because he really specializes in what iodine can do, and he's helped a lot of people with a lot of conditions. And he points out that, mainstream medical is, they're demonizing it. They're making it a lot scarier than it really is. And in his experience, you can go through some rough things if you're taking huge doses of iodine, but it's part of a detox that people are going through.
Hmm.
So the dangers are very much overstated. Now, I'm not sure, there may be forms of iodine that somebody's come up with that really aren't safe, and if you take a lot, it could hurt you. I don't know about that. So I just made sure I got, a form that's definitely safe with a great track record, and that's what I'm recommending to people.
Okay, so the Lugal's 2% solution,
Yeah,
that one, yeah?
yeah.
And 5 drops a day is not gonna kill anybody, right?
No, no. In the different dosages that different people use vary so much. I said five because it's definitely enough, but it's nowhere near the big doses that some people take. And I would throw it out there for people that after you've taken 5 doses or 5 drops a day for like a month, you could drop it down to like 2 drops a day after that, just for
Oh yeah.
maintenance. But the five won't hurt you. If you keep taking the five, it's not going to do anything. It's just that you can take a little less.
Okay. And
Just
for you personally, do you take 5 every day or you need more?
I've been doing about 3. I took like 10 for like months, and recently I just dropped it to 3 just for maintenance because I know I've built up my levels. I must have plenty of it in me now, and so 2 to 3 drops a day now just for maintenance.
Okay. And everyone in your family takes iodine as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
one of our really high priority ones, just because of the situation with the lack of it in the food chain and the extra radiation on the planet.
Okay, so it really is like that important. Like it's yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, it's one of my. I tell people, some guys will say, "Hey, I don't have any money right now. What's like one or two supplements if I can only get one or two?" And based on my data of who's deficient in what in society right now, usually I'll say take your iodine and your methyl B12, and you'll probably notice a lot of improvements just from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, about the methyl B12, like we've all been taught that it's just vegans who get it, right? But apparently, a lot of meat eaters have it too. I think it's like 60% or something. They're
Yeah,
deficient in B12.
yeah. It turns out that B12 has something to do with a bacteria that we used to eat by plucking our food out of the ground and hunting and eating things off the land. And what's happened is because our modern processes of processing food, the way they clean it and stuff, you're not getting that bacteria anymore that you
Yeah.
used to eat that would then convert into B12. So even meat eaters a lot of times just don't have enough these days, and it's methyl B12 is safe. If anything, if you take too much, some people get a little bit hyper, and then you don't need quite that much of a dose.
Okay.
But, but that's about it. It's not like it hurts you if you take too much, and
Yeah.
it's a rampant deficiency. It's very affordable, and it's just something that a lot of people, if they would just try that, they'd notice a lot of benefits just from that one thing.
Hmm. Now, if someone is consuming a lot of red meat or animal products in general, would they still require a B12 supplement, in your opinion?
They're a little less likely to, because those animals will have some B12 in their body. Most of them will, but then again, depending on where that animal grew up and what its environment was, some of them will and some of them won't. So it's you're kind of shooting in the dark. You don't really know as a meat eater if you're really getting enough or not. You are more likely to have better B12 levels than a full-on vegan. But the percentage of difference is just not what people thought. And another thing is that different people absorb it. Some people absorb B12 real easy. Some people don't absorb it well at all. And this is going back to how bad gut health is on a lot of
Yeah.
human beings. A lot of people's guts are so corroded with rust on the pipes, they just can't absorb certain things in the diet.
Hmm.
So with 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 people like that, sometimes they have to take it for a while before they even start to notice anything. Whereas another person might notice it within a day. They can already feel the difference. But either way, being that most people are deficient, my advice to people, so you don't have to go get an expensive test, would just be get yourself a bottle of methyl B12, take a pill each day, and just observe the difference. If you feel better after a month, you know that you can benefit from that supplement.
Hmm.
If you don't notice anything from it, I'd say fine, don't worry about it. You probably have enough B12.
Right. Okay. So I think we covered a lot of things here. I want to ask like maybe a few more questions about strength training, and then we'll
Okay.
end at that. All right?
Awesome.
It's been good so far. So
Yes.
this question might be, I don't know how hard it's gonna be to answer, but what would be some of your top exercises that you can incorporate that are partial lifts, which would be beneficial for athletes, specifically for injury prevention and just getting better general strength?
Okay. Uh, I would start with the trap bar high handle because I know most people would call that a partial because it's not from full depth or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so, and even off blocks, I mean, depending on physiology, you've got guys that are 6'5", and two-thirds of it is their legs or whatever. You got all these different bodies. So I'd say using a trap bar lift from a position where you feel really strong, as low as you can reasonably go before you start to really drop off on your strength. You know, like we were talking about earlier, if you can raise something up 2 inches and lift 200
Exactly.
more,
Yeah.
that's worth doing as an overall athlete, you know. So that the Jeffersons, because of the different angles and the control and how it mimics real life with your feet staggered. Um, I like weighted lunges for athletes because if you go out and do them uphill and downhill, you have to deal with the balance issue. You have to deal with coordination and gravity. So it just makes
Hmm.
you, more cat-like on your feet, more agile. Um, Variations of overhead pressing, especially standing where you have to use your whole body,
Hmm.
because now your brain is having to coordinate every single muscle pretty much in your whole body at one time in order to make that work. So that's really cool for just training your nervous system. Um, like the way you and I will prioritize upper back and mid back more than chest, probably compared to almost everybody out there. I think that's brilliant for an athlete because I think everybody's doing it
Yeah.
backwards. They're all over prioritizing the front, and it just makes you injury prone.
Right.
So that's a good one. Your neck, your emphasis on neck, extremely important for long run. Not having something really hurt you down the line. Um, what else here? As far as just good partials, every variation of rack pulls. I, I like um, I like partials on almost anything, but not exclusively. I'll just throw this out there again for people because I know people assume that's all I do
Yeah.
because I tend to show more partials. But I include full range stuff just for the mobility and coordination and agility and for some extra volume. But in order to strengthen the tendons and the skeletal structure and the nervous system, for example, a heavy above the knee rack pull, you have to have great core integrity to do that, or else the body won't even let you lift it because it senses that, it's
Yeah.
not stable enough in there. You could get hurt. So, that gives a person a lot of core integrity, which is essential to almost every sport. And let's see, what else is really cool, partials wise?
Well, do you think that overhead press off like really high pins would be beneficial? Like
Yeah,
just like quarter repping?
sure, sure. I do. For me, uh, I noticed that I had my posture was not good there, like I was fighting myself a lot. And so just practicing doing the lockout part and having to get my shoulder posture back more,
Right.
it improved my overall ability to overhead press. So I think there's endless useful applications to partials, and I think any overall athlete who wants to be just the best they can be should. Now, depending on the sport, you don't need a lot of this for tennis or whatever, but for most sports, I think if people would use an intelligent approach to include more partials somewhere in their training, they'd be more injury proof, like you say, if nothing else from having much stronger connective tissues, which that's always what breaks in sports. It's always the
Yeah.
tendons and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it couldn't make more sense to me.
Okay. And one final thing about Zercher lifts. If someone got really, really strong at them, like doing 1,000 pound holds for time, would it be like almost impossible to break their arm? Or like if someone tries to armbar you, it'd be more difficult?
It'd be way harder. Yes, you're especially because not only are you strengthening the tendon, obviously, you want those big cable tendons, but your negative resistance strength will be so high that when somebody tries to armbar you, forget about your positive, but
Yeah.
your negative is so strong. For them to get that arm all the way out and hyper extend it, much harder. In fact, I can speak from experience. If I catch somebody trying to armbar me before they get my arm out straight, I'm almost impossible for anybody to armbar, even heavyweights,
Okay.
even using their whole body, because I can resist so hard from like right here. If you can't get my arm out straight, you can't get me,
Right.
So it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Because I was thinking about it. Like it makes sense if you're gonna overload it with that much weight. Like it would just make you like bulletproof almost.
Yeah.
Now, what about I've heard this, right? Some guys claim that you can get a hematoma in your arm from doing zercher lifts. Do you think that's like
Hmm.
not really true, or it's possible? Because it sounds plausible, but then again, if you ease into it, I don't see that happening necessarily.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I'm sure it's possible. Um, I'd imagine the stats on that are it's extremely rare, and I feel like the person would have to have a little bit of a predisposition to that issue,
Yeah.
in order to have that problem, because there shouldn't be anything about pressuring down on a vein like that that would do that. I mean, I see getting bruised up, yeah,
Yeah.
but I just don't see why it would cause a hematoma unless you had some kind of predisposition or weakness in that way.
Yeah.
It's just like, the way you spike your blood pressure doing any heavy lift. If you had like really weak veins in your head, you could give yourself an aneurysm. You could just drop dead in the middle of a squat. But if you're afraid of that, like that's one path. But I always told myself, well, the best way to prevent it then would be to build up to it, to have strong veins that are used to having all
Yeah.
that pressure. So I I don't know. I think that's one of those rare
Okay.
things.
Okay. No problem. Well,
Yeah.
then, since you brought it up, do you think that heavy lifting over a long period of time, and I'm talking like brutally heavy, where you're doing one rep maxes, grinding, all that stuff, provided that you have good health, say someone is using your Nether Better upgrade manual, right?
Mhm.
Sorry. Do you think that it would negatively impact their organs or their heart or something like that? Like, could it be damaging to be lifting that heavy? Like, if you're 70 years old and you're trying to do 1,000 pound rack pulls, like, would that cause a lot of stress to the system? And would it be recommended to do more of a calisthenics based programming or just moderate weights if you're at that age?
You know, I think if you've been training that way for a long time, I think you're going to be okay because I literally think you've genetically strengthened.
Genetically upgrade,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Whereas if you start at age 70, I would definitely say do something more reasonable for a while, and slowly build up on the strength stuff because you could have an aneurysm. If this is the first time in your life where you've, doubled or tripled your blood pressure or something and you're 70 years old, that might be asking for a serious problem. But
Mm,
I think the guys that have been doing it already forever, they're fine.
okay. And do you
It's
think that serious athletic training is less beneficial for health compared to just standard fitness training?
Yeah, for most people, what we do would beat them down more than it would lift them up. You got to have a you got to have a spirit and a mind and everything. Your will has to be aligned with this. And I think if it is, and you do your nutrition and your diet well, I think we're adding years to our life the way we're doing it as naturals, caring about nutrition and health.
Yeah.
But I think that for most average people who aren't this hardcore about stuff, they would extend their longevity and health a lot more by doing something more moderate. Definitely.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Just want to confirm that. So that's pretty much it, man. I think we covered everything. It's been almost 4 hours. It's been three
Yeah.
hours and 47 minutes
Uh,
of nonstop chat and goodness.
yeah, it's a
So
beautiful thing.
yeah, so we covered everything from muscle building, strength building. We talked about lifestyle, a lot of cool things. So I just want to know from you: are there any things that you would add to this discussion, or like, are there any messages, strong messages that you have that would really benefit the viewers watching right now?
Yeah, let me think what I'd like to get out there. I, I think that the way you recognized what I'm up to says a lot about you, and I, I can't like when I see somebody try to criticize your channel, I don't see how they even have an argument. Like because I can tell that you are who you say you are. Now I know that not everybody knows that, not everybody knows who they can trust, but the way you're prioritizing things on your channel is just it's an amazing thing. And in my own way, I strongly believe in what I'm doing, and I just believe that the opportunities for collaborations of different kinds are always going to be there. as your channel continues to explode, and eventually mine's going to get big too. I believe that, and I think that's really exciting because, you know, like I was saying earlier, you had a vision for what are really important priorities, which I think are awesome priorities. And look how many people have caught on to that vision, you know? So I'm feeling the same way. If you do something you believe in and you prioritize health and longevity so that people can have a long training career or whatever it is they're trying to do, or just a longer, better life, by putting the priorities in the right places instead of trying to be the biggest guy you can as quick as you can or to get attention by some other means like that, I think that over time people are going to see the wisdom in that more. They're going to see that a wise person is looking at the long-term picture and prioritizing what they're teaching and what they're embodying and showing according to that, according to a very wise long-term picture. And I'm just glad to be part of that now, you know, to be out here showing people, hey, you know, you're going to continue to improve over time. I'm going to continue to improve over time. We're doing it naturally. It may be slower, but it's also, it's more bulletproof. You really have what you have. And furthermore, we're building up our vitality and health, and that's part of how we're getting these gains. And just that alone is so valuable to people, you know. The world, if we could get young people on that boat, they'll be thanking us so much, you know, 10 years from now or whatever, when they realize how much that means to have good priorities for the long term instead of selling out your health to try to have something really fast that's going to be fleeting and not really going to satisfy you anyway.
Absolutely.
So I guess that sums it up.
Okay, well, I think that's perfect. So if people want to learn more about you, where could they find you?
Nether Beast Underground Muscle.
Okay, and if they want to email you,
Okay,
what would that be?
netherbeastunderground@gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you greatly for your time, Nether. It was a fantastic experience. I hope that the viewers took something from this. It was really fun interacting with you one-on-one. And I want to wish you the best of success in all aspects of life, with your training, with your life, family, everything. So
Well, thank
much
you.
love and respect to you. I think you're a great guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing how your channel continues to expand and just keep helping people, you know?
All right. Thank you so much. I couldn't be happier about this. I've already felt like your friend for some time, and you've been nothing but supportive and good to me. And I just thank you for recognizing my channel and recognizing what's going on here, bringing me on board, get me some exposure, so you know we can constructively add more to the whole scene together for everybody's benefit, man. It's a great honor and a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to future collaborations and discussions and so forth.
Likewise, brother. And we'll see how the viewers respond. Maybe we'll do a part two, do some other stuff, and we'll leave it at that. All
Excellent.
right. So you have yourself a great day, and talk to you next time.
All right, Alex. Thank you. Much love, brother.
All right. Much love. Take care.